So there's been a lot of talk about Joe Biden's cognitive decline. And you know what? I think that's fair. I think that's fair. I've seen quite a bit of evidence on that front. A lot of gaffes, a lot of very elderly, seniory moments. And, you know, it's not just a thing where it's right versus left, Republican versus Democrat. Any independent, any moderate, any normie or apolitical person, they are without a doubt going to notice that, and that may impact their voting decision moving forward. I mean, on the one hand, you have Trump with 91 criminal charges. That's serious. He was just convicted of fraud in a civil case. That's serious. But it is also human nature to see a guy who can barely walk and falls all over the place and clearly needs a whole bunch of Adderall in order to get through the day and go, I don't know, maybe that guy shouldn't be our leader. But having said all that, while it is fair to talk about Biden's cognitive decline, I don't think there's nearly as much conversation about Trump's cognitive decline. And I think there's quite a bit of evidence that it's going on. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of recent moments that happened, which are kind of eyebrow raising, and we needed to go ahead and take a look at them. So let's start with this one. This happened about a week ago, and this is a golden oldie from Trump, to be honest. He said this multiple times.
Couldn't be voter ID. Now you have voter ID to buy a loaf of bread. You have ID to buy a loaf of bread. You have everything. You have pictures.
Now, I don't need to tell you guys, of course you don't need ID to buy a loaf of bread. That's not a thing. But he's now said this like 3 or 4 times. This is recent, but he's also said it a bunch of times during his presidency. Has nobody said to him, sir, that's not how this works? And does he not know how buying groceries works? Okay, but we're just getting started. We're just getting warmed up. We got this one for you too, recent.
Iowa, we go to New Hampshire, we come down here. You know, the beauty was when I came here, everyone thought Bush was going to win. And then they took a poll and they found out Trump was up by about 50 points. Everyone said, what's going on right here? They thought Bush, because Bush supposedly was a military person. Great. You know what? He was a military. He got us into the Middle East. How did that work out, right? But they all thought that Bush might win. Jeb. Remember Jeb? He used the word Jeb. He didn't use the word Bush. I said, you mean he's ashamed of the last name? And then they immediately started using the name Bush. Never forget it.
So he confused George W. Bush and Jeb Bush. Now, when I first heard about this story, I thought, it could have just been a slip up or whatever. But he expounds on it quite a bit. So that's like, well, hold on, man. Really? At no point did you stop and try to correct yourself? Like, he keeps going as if Jeb Bush got us into the war in Iraq. Okay, weird, but I got more evidence for you.
But you have a better chance of being struck by lightning than hitting a whale with your boat. There has only been, listen to this, one such whale killed off the coast of South Carolina in the last 50 years. But on the other hand, their windmills are causing whales to die in numbers never seen before. Nobody does anything about that. They're washing up and show. I saw it this weekend. 3 of them came up. You wouldn't see it once a year. Now they're coming up on a weekly basis. The windmills are driving them crazy. They're driving the whales, I think, a little batty.
So this is, of course, incoherent babbling about windmills killing whales. Now, to be fair to him, there is a really, really dumb right-wing talking point on this, where they're trying to claim windmills do actually kill whales because whales communicate with noise and the windmills make a noise that the whales don't like. But all this stuff is totally unproven, and we all know the core of why they're saying it. It's to make the argument, don't do renewable energy. Do not do renewable energy. Stick with fossil fuels. That's why they're doing it. And Trump, by the way, has a history on this. He hates windmills. Remember when he claimed they cause cancer? Because one of his golf courses, I believe it's in Scotland, they put up windmills, and you could see it from his course, and he thought it was an eyesore, so he sued over it and went to war over the windmills. So he's always had a hatred for windmills, but here he is saying windmills are killing whales. Okay, I got more for you.
Report, I wish, covered the oranges, how it started. In the failing New York Times by an anonymous, gutless.
Apparently he can't say the word anonymous.
They sacrifice every day for the furniture and future of their children. Jim Apple. Mike Pounds. I know words. I have the best words. Yosemites, Nambia.
He says Yosemites instead of Yosemite. Okay, that's funny.
Island. You have voter ID to buy a loaf of bread. The Democrats, there was a mosquito. I don't want mosquitoes around me. I'm a very stable genius. The disinfectant.
Looking at the solar eclipse. Oh my God, I remember that one.
Stable genius. The disinfectant, where it knocks it out in a minute, 1 minute. And is there a way we can do something like that by injection? I tested positively for negative, right? People are flushing toilets 10 times, 15 times, as opposed to. Their windmills are causing whales to die in numbers never seen before. Nobody does anything about that. They're washing up and show. I saw it this weekend. 3 of them came up. You wouldn't see it once a year. Now they're coming up on a weekly basis. The windmills are driving them crazy. They're driving the whales, I think, a little batty.
Recently, former President Donald Trump has gone on some strange rants, although the one you just heard is kind of indicative of what you'd experienced during his presidency. But that wasn't the only gaffe we've heard from Trump recently. Thanks to some of these sound bites, Trump's own mental state is being called into question, meaning that the 2 frontrunners for the 2024 presidential election, for president, of course, are potentially suffering from age-related cognitive decline. Now let's watch more of Trump's recent lowlights.
We start in Iowa, we go to New Hampshire, we come down here. You know, the beauty was when I came here, everyone thought Bush was going to win. And then they took a poll and they found out Trump was up by about 50 points. Everyone said, what's going on right here? They thought Bush, because Bush supposedly was a military person. Great. You know what? He was a military. He got us into the Middle East. How did that work out, right? But they all thought that Bush might win. Jeb. We have a man who is totally corrupt and the worst president in the history of our country, who is cognitively impaired, in no condition to lead, and is now in charge of dealing with Russia and possible nuclear war. Just think of it. We would be in World War II. Their leading political opponent, they're leading by a lot, including Obama. I'll tell you what, you take a look at Obama and take a look at some of the things that he's done. This is the same thing. The country is very divided. And we did with Obama. We won an election that everyone said couldn't be won.
Now, to be fair, that very last clip, he corrected himself. He remembered that he didn't run against Obama. He ran against Hillary Clinton in 2016. But just to comment on the other 2 clips that were in that compilation that we showed you, he accused Jeb Bush of sending us to Iraq when it was, of course, George W. Bush. And then he accused Joe Biden of inching us ever so close to World War II, which has already happened. He might have just misspoken. He meant World War III. But what are your thoughts on this, Cenk?
Okay, so as usual, we're fair and we tell you when Joe Biden makes the gaffes and we point out it's concerning and we take a lot of heat for it, right? Mainstream media is basically sometimes points it out and half the time covers it up. If Trump had said a lot of the things that Biden did, they would have been talking about it 24/7. Now, are the Republicans fair in return? I mean, look at this guy. He says, the problem with Biden is that he's cognitively impaired. He's gonna get us into World War II. Okay, how many mistakes has he made? He's made a lot of mistakes. Has he made as many mistakes as Biden? No, I don't think so. I think Biden's made more mistakes, okay? But we're talking about cognitive impairment. This moron took a dementia test and thought it was an IQ test. I mean, that should be part of the test. What test are you taking? If you can't tell what test you're taking, you might have cognitive impairment. So look, half of it is, I don't know if he just keeps slipping up, if it's age or not age. No, Jeb Bush didn't get us into wars in the Middle East. That was George Bush. Wait till he finds out there's 2 George Bushes who were president. Woof, he's gonna be lost. So, and for Trump, it's a bigger problem because, average IQ is around 100. I don't think Biden's that bright. But if he was at 110 and now he's down to 95, it could be a problem. For Trump, if he was at 8, he's going to be down to 4, right? So he's already a moron. But I will defend one part of those clips. Now, and it's an ironic defense. That whale thing, I was like, what on God's green earth is he talking about? The windmills kill whales? Has he lost his mind entirely? No, it turns out he hasn't lost his mind. It turns out this is a thing that Republicans are saying now.
Yeah.
And so I bothered to go look out a fact check because I was like, how in the world would windmills kill whales? So they had made up this insane theory, and there's a reason why they made it up, and it's really interesting. They said, as they're putting the windmills in some parts of the ocean, it disturbs the whales and kills them, right? Because a bunch of whales were washing up on shore, like 30 of them had washed up. So they invented this thing. And then so the fact checkers that went and talked to scientists, and they're like, yeah, that doesn't happen at all. The whales are not within hearing distance when they do that. It's not even close.
Yeah. So sorry, I want to shed a little light on this because I looked into it as well. And the concern was that, because whales use sound in order to communicate and survive. And so there was concern that the sound of the windmills or the wind turbines was interfering, like the sound pollution was interfering with their ability to communicate. And so unfortunately, to bolster these claims, you have a guy named Patrick Moore, the co-founder of Greenpeace and its ex-president in Canada. He believed that the acoustic systems used by vessels surveilling the ocean floor harm marine animals' sense of hearing, risking crucial ability to navigate. So they basically took what he said and used that to bolster claims that these wind turbines and the sound pollution, noise pollution of these wind turbines are harming the whales. However,
how do they run against Trump without making him an even larger figure by going after him? What does a Chris Christie do, for instance, whose whole campaign is to be the one person left standing who's going hard against Donald Trump when Donald Trump's not present?
Yeah, I don't know that what Chris Christie does really matters that much, Andrea. I think that if you look at polls, Republican primary voters feel better about Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the Democrat, because of his anti-vaccine stance, than they do about Chris Christie and Mike Pence. These are folks that Republican voters are just not interested in hearing from. And look, I would even just go a little bit further than Garrett went. The first debate ended up becoming absolutely meaningless. You're showing the poll numbers on the screen now. If you look at the polling averages, Donald Trump stayed absolutely steady. Ron DeSantis ticked down a little bit. Nikki Haley went up from 5 to 7. Tim Scott went down a little bit. All of that is nothing. I mean, Nikki Haley, I guess she got a little bump, but she's losing by 45 points. And this is a blowout. And none of these candidates, to make an electability argument when Donald Trump is tied with Joe Biden in the national polls, no Republican voters are buying that. Like that dog isn't hunting. So unless these men and women go on stage tonight and actually deliver a forceful argument against Trump that might appeal to Republican primary voters, then what are we doing here? This is just a waste of everybody's time.
Well, David Jolly, was it a waste of time for Ron DeSantis since he really didn't move the needle at all? If anything, moved it down after the first debate. What does he have to do? What is his mission tonight?
Yeah, Andrea, I agree with Tim. This is a big night for each of the candidates, but likely not a big night for the race. It is a 40-point race, and nothing is moving that. But if you are these candidates, this is your opportunity to try to solidify a second place in this race and maybe set yourself up for a future run or a future position. I think what Ron DeSantis or Nikki Haley or any candidate could try tonight that has not been done is to speak not to the moderators, speak not to each other on the stage, go straight to the Republican voters and make your earnest and sincere case as to why you are the better vessel for MAGA Nation and for Republicanism than Donald Trump. Is it elected?
Welcome to a special edition of RBN Live, GOP coverage of the second place person in the GOP debate. I'm one of your hosts. I'm CJ. What's up, Nick?
What's poppin', my friends, my family? Welcome to RBN Live, the special edition. Nick and Knight. My guest CJ joined us. I'm just playing. Nick and CJ. We got a GOP debate. I hope you guys are ready. Last one was very cringe and tough to get through, but I watch these for one reason. It's always been a habit of mine, especially now. The foreign policy section is the most important part for me. And it was a joke last time because last time they had like 2-hour debate. I really hope this one only 90 minutes. I didn't look. I really hope it's only 90 minutes. But last time they had like a 2-hour debate and they spent only like 15 minutes on foreign policy. You had the exchange between Vivek Ramaswamy and Nikki Haley, where Nikki Haley sounded like an unhinged maniac, and Vivek destroyed her where he points out how she's repeating the talking points of Bowen and Raytheon, and she had nothing. And it was funny watching Morning Joe and all the corporate establishment people pretend that Nikki Haley got the best of Vivek, and Vivek completely exposed her as a neocon puppet. So those are the moments I'm looking forward to. Very disappointed that Trump is not going to be there again because Trump supporters are celebrating it because they're in the cold. But we are missing potentially historic exchanges between him and Chris Christie. And I'm not talking about like the political theory. I'm talking about Ukraine specifically.
Yes.
Like, you guys don't want to see Trump discuss his feeling on the Ukraine war compared to neocons in the Republican Party? I want to see it because I think Trump has been quite incoherent on Ukraine. And I'm making a prediction that Trump wins. You're going to see the Ukraine proxy war continue. Because
nothing's going to change.
If you want to chime in,
I was just going to say nothing's going to change as far as what's actually going to happen in the war. But I think he's going to play this. Oh, I'm against the Ukraine war, just how he played. I'm against the swamp. I'm this populist. I'm going to do all these things. He's going to play that until he literally walks into the White House. Then he'll flip it up.
Trump said something when he was talking about Ukraine before, where he said, "Well, unlike Joe Biden, I'm a great deal maker." You know that we say I'm a deal maker. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get Putin down. And I'm gonna negotiate peace with them. Then the follow-up question was, "All right, what will you do if Putin doesn't listen to you?" And he's like, "Well, I'll send more weapons to Ukraine, make them do it." That's essentially what he said. He was like, "No, trust me, I know it. Biden them weak, man. I'll send him more weapons. I'll make them negotiate." I'm like, "Wait, what do you say?" And I tweeted about it. Am I the only one that heard what he just said here? So essentially, his policy would be similar to Biden. Either talk tough, demand Putin leave Ukraine. I got a great deal. Let's make peace. And then Putin's like, nah. And then Trump gonna fund Ukraine more. And then the same thing that happened when Trump betrayed his campaign lies last time, you're going to have Trump supporters work backward from the conclusion and defend him anyway. So people will say, how do you think that Trump can get away with that? Like, Nick, you think that Trump's going to continue the Ukraine war? Do you know how much people on the right hate that? They hate that because Trump and Tucker Carlson gave him the nod.
Right.
But Trump immediately backpedaled on that, and he said, well, I believe in American first, and Putin is threatening American first. He will get Trump coaches on board just like that. That's the problem with two-party duopolies. They follow the leader who follows the messaging of the U.S. empire. But go ahead, CJ, if you want to continue. And I have a quick story I want to do.
We can get to that in a minute.
I really think this segment is short because Wednesday nights I tend to cover a bunch of foreign policy. So I also more than anything, I want to kind of get your reaction to this Fox News segment on China.
Oh Lord.
Because I think, and once again, electoral politics predictions are not that important, but right now I think Trump is going to win. Who cares if I'm wrong or not? Who cares? But right now, my general vibe is I think Trump is going to win. So now what I'm trying to tell people that, man, if you think that this war machine is going to slow down when Trump wins, you're out of your goddamn mind. And I've been watching the right wings. The way they've been speaking on China is as unhinged as you get on when you talk about liberals on Ukraine. And I don't want to get twisted because we don't play one party worse than another, because what's shocking is MSNBC, Morning Joe, and Democrats, they are just as bad on China, but Republicans are like more out and out about it, right? They're like straight up predicting war with China. So I'm actually going to dive right into this clip simply because we don't have a lot of time. I already had, let's see, actually, we're already in the debate right now. I think they still do.
Oh, they already started? Oh, I thought it started at 9. Okay.
They do their pre-show. So I'll just have this up, make sure I right. But let's go to this because I saw this yesterday, and this like I watch these segments, and just like when I watch Morning Joe, I literally can't stop laughing. It's unbelievable that people watch this garbage. Oh wait, sorry, I didn't let me put it back up. It's crazy that people watch this garbage and they think they're getting real news. And this is why I say the United States is the most propagandized country in the world. Obviously, states engage in propaganda. We know that other states engage in propaganda. I am not being naive, fam. The thing is, other countries know when they're watching the media, they get media from the state. They know the biases. People watch the United States media and think they're getting real news. People watch this unhinged craziness. I don't know what the hell happened, but let me fix this. My share screen got all messed up. Here it is. I had the wrong. Thank God I didn't play it. But this is exactly why I say United States is more propaganda. I think the segment speaks for itself. Since we're a long time, we'll get started on it.
Island leaders this week, part of a U.S. campaign to block China's influence on the region. The Biden administration reportedly promising money for infrastructure and improved internet connectivity. Politico is reporting that the administration now is hoping to revive the World Trade Organization to help address China's economic policies and climate change. Joining me right now is the Gatestone Institute senior fellow and author of The Coming Collapse of China and China is Going to War. Gordon Chang is with us once again. Gordon,
you guys see the motherfuckers they always pull up. And this guy,
that's the same guy every time.
This guy is a Dr. Evil cartoon character. Like this guy is a parody of what you think a neocon is. And this guy pulls on an amazing grift. If you are a Chinese descent and you betray your people in drum war against your own people, same way that black neocons do, like Hakeem Jeffries, John Lewis, and many black leaders sell out our community by being pro-imperialism. The same thing applies to Asian people, Chinese people as well. If you're a Chinese Uncle Tom and you sell your people out and sell war, you're going to be rich. This guy on the other side of the screen, I'm sure, is insanely rich. He writes all these books. He writes all these books about why we should go to war with China, and white people buy him like a motherfucker because that's like porn to them, I guess. Right? But anyway, let's listen to his opinion.
He's like Larry Elders. He's the Chinese version of Larry Elders. That's basically what he is. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Have written China Going to War. Explain that for us.
So you guys see the book he wrote, China Going to War? And he has an aura of credibility among white America because it's a Chinese person saying, so he got secret knowledge of this, right? Anyway, let's continue.
I have a hard time understanding where this administration is on China. It comes up with these ideas to lessen the influence, but then the policies actually embolden China.
Well, certainly. We've seen Biden administration diplomacy create the impression in Chinese minds that the United States believes it is subordinate to China.
Hold up, fam. I know you guys are hearing this.
Talking about.
That's why I want to get your reaction. I legitimately. So you guys see how up is down, right? Blue is red, left is right. They are pretending that Joe Biden has been weak on China. You know the guy who's sending weapons to Taiwan, armed South Korea and Australia with nuclear submarines, persuaded Japan to increase their military budget by 45% in order to increase pressure on China. That guy? Yes, fam. This has been the talking point of right-wingers for quite some time now. That somehow Biden is secretly weak and beholden to China. But it gets way worse. I got slowed. Let's continue for a second time.
We did that by sending 4 senior officials to Beijing in a row without a return visit from a Chinese official to Washington. And when Jake Sullivan met Wang Yi, China's chief diplomat, over the weekend, it was not in the United States. Xi Jinping harks back to the imperial era where vassals went to China and China did not send representatives to others. So this is—
You guys see their argument, CJ? They say that Biden is weak on China. Ignore the arms to Ukraine. Ignore the nuclear submarines. Ignore them pretty much scrapping the one China policy. They're weak on Ukraine because Chinese people from the Chinese government visit the United States without the United States visiting. The United States visited China without China visiting the United States. That is legitimately the argument that they are making right now. It's that cartoonish, but let's continue. I got
really dangerous because deterrence was already breaking down. Biden is reinforcing that breakdown of critical deterrence.
So when you write about China going to war, are you talking about China going to war against the United States, or are you focused on Taiwan?
It's actually both.
So she asked him an absolutely batshit crazy question, where both answers are batshit crazy. Right? I want you to realize this. Both answers to that question is batshit, and he's like, all of the above. Wow, shit. So according to him, China is preparing to wage war in the United States right now. I want you guys to hear that again, and then I'll let it continue. Like, this is batshit.
So when you write about China going to war, are you talking about China going to war against the United States, or are you focused on Taiwan?
Both.
It's actually both. We already have unrestricted warfare, which is the killing of Americans with, for instance, fentanyl. But we're now seeing—
So it's China's fault that we have a fentanyl problem now. So somehow the Chinese Communist Party is responsible for fentanyl killing Americans. Not the CIA working with the drug cartels, not Big Pharma enabling the drug crisis. No, it's the Chinese Communist Party who's somehow pulling the string and forcing Americans to die with fentanyl. I'll let it continue because it's actually insane.
This is where China is preparing for hot war. So, for instance, with the China, Xi Jinping removing 11 generals in the rocket force, which is the branch of the Chinese military that controls nuclear weapons. One interpretation is that he's installing officers who he knows will push the button when he gives the order.
So that's completely— so this is what they do. Like, this is complete speculation. No evidence, no report. He just goes, one interpretation of that. Why are you picking the most unhinged interpretation unless you're a war hawk? How are you picking the most unhinged interpretation of that?
So the criticism of China behaving the way a country do is always hilarious to me. So CJ, if you ran a country, what would you do in the largest, one of the largest military superpowers of all time, who actually dropped the nuke a few times? You had multiple officials from that government that said they about to wage war with you. You had the United States say, "Oh, we predicted war with China in 4 or 5 years." NATO said, "We predicted war with China in 4 or 5 years." You had multiple Republican senators that were like, "Yeah, we're about to go to war with China soon." So China hears that and like, damn, we got a war coming up. Maybe we should shore up our military. Maybe that's what we should do because it's fucking unhinged country talking about going to war with us. They use the fact that China is building their military up as some sort of aggression against the United States, as if the United States doesn't increase the military budget every single goddamn year, as if Japan did increase the military budget by 45%. But I'm gonna let it continue. There are only like 4 minutes. I definitely want to get 4 more minutes. I want to get through, so I actually let it play for a bit. It's gonna be tough though.
Rehearsals for war, one that is going on right now in Fujian province. Some people actually say it is the beginning of an invasion, but I think it's just a rehearsal. But the point is, Xi Jinping is getting his country ready for war. He's talking about war all the time. He is incented to be reckless, and we are being oblivious because we have no sense of urgency in the Oval Office.
I totally agree with you, Gordon. In fact, that is one of the reasons I focused so much on the apprehensions at the southern border. I mean, why are we seeing this enormous increase in the number of Chinese nationals coming through the border into America. And I spoke with the chairman of the House Homeland Security Committee the other day, Mark Green, and he also was quite concerned about this issue. Watch this.
Listen to this crazy. I'll let it play. Listen to this
18,000
crazy.
Chinese nationals. The highest it's ever been before that was like 1,200.
Wow.
And this is a planned thing from China. I mean, there's no way it's not. And Xi Jinping's smart. He saw what Vladimir Putin did in Ukraine. They infiltrated, they migrated, military age guys in, they settled in Ukraine, and those were the saboteurs when he invaded. So there's no way they're not there for us when we try to defend Taiwan.
So these,
there is someone.
So there's so much to say there. So for one,
That
what he's talking about regarding the Putin thing is the fact that many Eastern Ukrainians are ethnic Russian who actually favor the Russian state. So this guy floats an unhinged conspiracy theory that these people who lived here for decades, the families who lived here for decades, Zoya, our great friend, I see you in the chat. Zoya's life, and from Odessa, former USSR, Soviet Union, right? That's Ukraine. You have long time generational familial ties. But what he's saying is that Putin planted Russian people in Ukraine to turn against the Ukrainian government, which is completely counterfactual. No evidence of that whatsoever. You know something else they have no evidence of, and they didn't show any evidence of that? They were saying that the Chinese Communist Party is instructing Chinese nationals, and they are young military-aged men, to infiltrate our country, CJ. So Chinese people immigrating to the United States, they're playing the idea that they are traitors here to infiltrate our government on behalf of the Chinese government so they can wage war against us. Guys, this is absolute cuckoo for Cocoa Puff bullshit. This is the same shit that got us Japanese concentration camps. You guys understand that? CJ, you guys understand that? So they said during World War II that Japanese people living in the United States were secret agents of Imperial Japan. And they used that as justification to create concentration camps to lock these people up. So Fox News here, CJ, is complaining that Biden is not doing anything about quote-unquote Chinese nationals in the United States. So my question is, what are you implying? It's almost like these people are arguing for the return of concentration camps where they want to put Chinese people in concentration camps the same way we did the Japanese people. We got Timmerman for the debates. I'm going to let it play, but that's what they are hitting to, and they're going to continue more on this nonsense.
In that group that's prepared.
So you think,
and we're getting our military bases overwhelmed.
So you think this is all planned, that Xi Jinping is directing these military-aged people to come into America and settle here and be saboteurs when he's ready?
We have to suspect that. I mean, Maria, we
no
have
evidence.
to suspect
We got
that. And anyone who doesn't is just...
Gordon, what are your thoughts on this?
Military age, Nick. What the fuck is that? Military age. You see how a propagandist has such an imagination, Nick, that just random people come in. How can I describe them as being something nefarious? You just say military age. You just literally just put military and say, hey, what does that mean? What? A military human. He's a what does that mean? But that's a new term, military age, as to say, because there's no other way to create just regular people coming over to a country, migrating or visiting or coming to live, moving to live, unless you do it this way. There is no other evidence. This is why they have to describe Chinese aggression very vaguely, very like where they're not able to give details because they're not doing anything militarily. But go ahead, Nick. If you're gonna,
I love that you brought that up, and that's why I wanted to get your reaction to this segment, because this segment literally had me feeling some way. I literally could not contain my reaction. It was unbelievable watching this for the first time. So I want you guys to realize military-age men is what these psychopaths, the neocon psychopaths say all the time. So CJ, when we launched the war on terror, we would drone strike and kill innocent civilians, but they would report, oh, there were some military-aged men that we killed. That way, white Americans be like, oh, so instead of saying we killed civilians, we said we killed military-aged men. It's a term they use all the time, so people automatically think we're killing hostiles, but no, we killing people's fathers and brothers and shit. You know what I mean? And they also use the term insurgent. The George Bush administration, the George Bush Jr. administration did this a lot. They said there was insurgents. What does that mean? The fuck they created a term. So when you look up what the Pentagon defined as insurgent, they said it was essentially any military-aged man who did not support U.S. occupation. So essentially, if you attended a protest and you wanted the United States to leave Iraq, and the United States killed you, they wouldn't report you as a civilian death. They said, "Oh, we killed a military-aged man insurgent, someone who's anti-United States." Anyway, there's so much crazy shit our government do that people don't realize, the propaganda terms that people don't realize that I'll spend all day. There's only like one more minute we definitely have to get to. I think we got enough time, so let's continue. So you had the other guest you played, and this host does anti-China segments all the time. So will this guy who is of Chinese descent, he's not military age, but is he going to put back about the idea that anyone who immigrate from China may be a Chinese spy? You would think it would be in his best interest, in his family best interest, to put back against that, right, CJ? But let's hear what he had to say.
Usually military-aged men coming through, according to the border sources we've spoken with.
Yes. We're seeing a failure in China, which is the reason why there are Chinese migrants in the United States and elsewhere. But in that group are saboteurs. There are packs of Chinese males of 5 to 15 of military age traveling without family members and pretending not to speak English. And as the chairman said, Border Patrol knows that some of these Chinese males have links to the military. There was that lab that a building inspector stumbled across in Reedley, California, a month or two ago. And there they had at least 20 pathogens. That's the official count. But there were almost 1,000 mice that had been genetically engineered to transmit disease. So China is planning to kill Americans before the first shot is fired in Taiwan, Japan.
China is engineering genetically modified mice to kill Americans. Dude, they got CJ. There are white boomers watching this shit in horror right now.
Believe it.
They're gonna see military-age Chinese people walking around. They're gonna be freaking the fuck out now.
So this is some aggressive, Nick. I must say,
yeah.
This is some of the most aggressive as far as the rhetoric, propaganda I've heard in a long time, because, this is a great comment, CJ. Out of you have to be just in a different mental state to really understand the sort of psychopath nature of what he's doing. And it's a propaganda tactic where he's not distinctly telling you anything that the military-aged men that are arriving here are the ones that's doing that's planning these experiments, these rat experiments. He's not telling you that. All he has to do is talk about it in the same sentence to give you the impression. So what he did was seamlessly go from, we got these military-aged men who are coming, they're trained, they're pretending to like to speak English. I didn't even hear a break to say I'm changing the subject. He just went into something about these pathogens, Nick, without a break in the sentence. That's to connect these two seemingly things that have nothing to do with each other. No evidence at all what he's saying. He's just taking essentially two conspiracy theories, real conspiracy theories that is just out of there, and just let me sandwich all of this together to create this emotion of terror. We got to do something. They're coming for us. That kind of thing. That's what he's doing.
So, CJ,
just crazy.
China has deadly air balloons. And in this segment alone, China is responsible for sending fentanyl and killing Americans. And now China had fucking Master Splinter, apparently, have genetically altered mice killing Americans. And they fit all this in one segment, fam. It's literally impressive.
I've never seen this be this aggressive like this.
I pulled this one because this one the most recent one, CJ, and I'm going to be doing this. I need to make a name for the Chinese segments because I'm pushing this because this is something that we need to pay attention to. Maybe China propaganda watch, something like that. Because almost every day there's a video like this on Fox News. And it's getting worse. And then MSNBC is matching them, and they are in hand as well. But we got to be clear. If you look at these right-wing neocons, as you just said, they are ramping up to the next fucking level with China. And even the anti-war right-wingers like Matt Gaetz, even they signal that they want to wage war with China. They got criticism of the Ukraine war because they think they're taking resources from waging war against China. Right? So I'll play the last few minutes, and we're gonna switch to debate here soon. I want them to finish this unhinged conspiracy theory, and we can move on. This is the last segment we're gonna play, so I'll let it play for about a minute.
In Taiwan, Japan, the Philippines, or wherever.
Wow. Liz Peek, jump in.
Good morning, Gordon. Is it?
Let me go. I don't know if I
Thing
see
to
what
kill America a month or two ago, and there they had at least 20 pathogens. That's the official count. But there were almost 1,000 mice that had been genetically engineered to transmit disease. So China is planning to kill Americans before the first shot is fired in Taiwan, Japan, the Philippines, or wherever.
And there's one more thing I'm gonna say, because I saw a great comment I wanted to highlight, because sorry, I forgot you now. I put your comment on the screen earlier. They said, since they are saying this on Fox News, this is 100% what the United States is doing, by the way. Not the exact, maybe not the exact same thing, like the exact same example, but we definitely engage in chemical warfare against our enemies. What we do is 100% projection.
Jump in.
Good morning, Gordon. Is it? I wasn't going to ask you about this, but is our government tracking these Chinese nationals who are coming into our country? Are they trying to keep tabs on where they go, and where are they going? Are there particular cities or destinations that you're aware of?
We do not track them after they've been released. And of course, we have no idea of the number of Chinese males who come across and are not apprehended. So
not
clearly,
apprehended,
we have
fam.
a sabotage problem.
I ended there, but you got to see, this is maybe for the next minute. They imply that Biden is not doing enough because he's not setting up Chinese concentration camps. So he said there are Chinese males that are not contained. What are you implying, sir? What do you want our government to do to make us safe in this situation? So, man, never discount how crazy things can get, fam. Never discount how violent our police state could become. And that's why I'm going to focus on this, on China Propaganda Watch, because not only from Democrats, but from Republicans and the right, they have completely and utterly lost their goddamn mind. That's why it's great that I see Glenn Greenwald and Jimmy and people who have a very sizable right-wing audience. I'm glad that they speak out against the war against China. We need more independent media to speak out against the war against China, because even the right-wing faux populists, they're not even pretending on this. They're like, no, they straight up unhinged China neocons as well. If you pay attention to all the right-wing commentators, there's only one sliver of the American population knowing one part of political discourse that against war in China, and that is the socialists, that the communists, that the anti-war activists that are true to this, that are calling to prevent war in China. But anyway, CJ, any last thoughts on that segment? They get started on the debate now. No rush, but they still setting it up.
Yeah, it's like literally I've never, or I haven't. I'm not gonna say never. I haven't in a long, like at least over a year, haven't seen that intense, aggressive propaganda on really anything. It's usually softer. Like if I had to describe, it's usually trying to mask it a little bit more than what he's doing there. Because if you know even a little bit information about China, you could clearly understand that this guy is just out of his mind what he's saying. So
I think most Americans can see that, to be honest. Because remember, like, if you look at the numbers, even the good Fox News show, this is a very small percent of partisans in this country. I want people to realize that. Like, people lose their faith in humanity and all that shit, but like when you look at like Ben Shapiro, right? When you look at even Fox News, these are very small percent. Like, there's only 25% of the countries who consider themselves partisan, right? Who are Republican, Democrat. And then among the people who are Republican and Democrat, even a smaller amount actually listen to this. And one of the reasons why they don't listen to it, because I think most average people who are not brainwashed and their mind not completely colonized, they will see this segment. They're like, what the fuck is this? And that's why faith in corporate news has fallen to an all-time low. Well, there are obviously the large constituent of right-wingers, especially older white boomer and Gen X people, who they will literally believe anything you say about China. Anything you say about DPRK, anything you say about any country that is considered oppositional to the United States, they will believe. But I think the era of people who just blindly believe in media is over, and that's why most people don't vote. You know what I mean? A lot of people shape their messaging and their politics based on how can I win over Trumpers? How can we win over Biden people? Meanwhile, our message is like, let's win over the people who don't vote, the 50+%. Anyway, that's what we did at RBN Chapters. mobilize people who otherwise wasn't moved by electoral politics to donate. Big shout out to GV Black for the $5. Thank you for the super chat. Double check if you like the video. Absolutely. On YouTube and Rumble. And share the stream to all your friends, or you will be cursed. Anything you want to add in, CJ, then we can let the audio play here.
Yeah. Well, let me before we get to that, let me put something up because Trump has already started his. So you know how he's running a parallel. He's running a parallel event. I have it right here. So he's running. We can just listen to it. It's actually started like at 5:30, right when we came on. It's already been going. So we can. Oops. I didn't share the right one. My bad, everybody.
Yeah, I literally completely forgot about that. But Trump is doing this event at a non-unionized plant, right?
Man. Yeah, I'm not sure he's even at a plant now. I think he's just in the city where the plant is. But I'm gonna bring it up in just a second. Hang on, it's still kind of opening right now. I don't want to put on the screen until it's fully open. Okay, it looks like it's ready, just about ready. Here we go. So he is, he's in Michigan. We can just listen to a little bit and I'll just have it up playing. And, in between commercials, we can always go back to it. But let's listen to a little bit of it.
Still kind of buffering,
but in Michigan, they grow weed in Michigan, he said.
That's a good way to start.
Iowa, other places.
The first thing we heard is he grow weed in Michigan.
Think of this. He wants electric vehicle mandates that will spell the death of the U.S. auto industry. You know, it doesn't matter. I watch it. You're negotiating a contract. You're all on picket lines and everything. But
I'll be right back,
CJ. It doesn't make a damn bit of difference what you get, because in 2 years, you're all going to be out of business. You're not getting anything. What they're doing to the auto industry in Michigan and throughout the country is absolutely horrible and ridiculous. Hundreds of thousands of American jobs, your jobs, will be gone forever because crooked Joe Biden is selling out. But I don't think it's him. I don't think he actually knows what the hell he's doing. He doesn't. She says he doesn't know. He doesn't know. It's not his fault. Let's not blame him. But he's surrounded with radical left Marxists and crazy people.
Marxists.
Bad people. He's selling you out to China. He's selling you out to the environmental extremists on the radical left. People have no idea how bad this is going to be also for the environment. You know, those batteries, when they get rid of them, and lots of bad things happen. And when they're digging it out of the ground to make those batteries, it's going to be very bad for the environment. You can be loyal to American labor, or you can be loyal to the environmental lunatics, but you can't really be loyal to both. It's one or the other. And they understand that. The Democrat Party has no idea what they're doing right now. They have no idea what to do. Crooked Joe is siding with the left-wing crazies who will destroy automobile manufacturing and will destroy our country itself. They're destroying our country. You look at that at the border. We had the safest border in history. Now you look at what's happening. It's just a horror show. I side with the auto workers of America and with those who want to make America great again, and I always will. And I don't get one thing. I don't get why.
Is the debate on your screen? Because we can go away from this. If they started debating already, we can go to that screen.
They're going to be able to go on long distances. They immediately give up. I see it with the oil companies too. They're promoting windmills, which don't work, by the way. But they don't work. They want windmills all over the place. It's like they're told what to do, and that's what they go against their industry. They're either stupid or they're gutless. But why do they concede so fast? This plant, we just walked through this plant, and the electric vehicles are going to put them out of business. They don't need any of this. The things that you make in Michigan, they don't need any of it. Why is it that these big, powerful car companies with guys that are making $35 million a year immediately quit? They say, you want electric vehicles, we'll give it to you, when the damn things don't go far enough and they're too expensive. And I'm not in that business, but I know a lot about it. They don't go far enough and they're too expensive. A vote for Crooked Joe means the future of the auto industry will be made in China. That's what it's going to be. That's where they're made. My pledge to every automaker is this: a vote for President Trump means the future of the automobile will be Made in America, where it should be. Made in America.
That's literally all you have to say now is just mention the word America or Constitution or some word, some trigger word. Liberty is another one that they use all the time. But did the do you have the debate, or have they started debating yet, or do you have it or no?
You can keep this playing. I'm trying to get this because I had this video, but they wasn't playing the debate on this one.
Gotcha. Yeah, sometimes they have it like a talking.
Let's see. I'm trying. Here it is. I don't know why this video wasn't working earlier. I'm gonna put this back up. I don't know if I'm the only one having this problem with this website right now. So they're streaming on Fox News. We're gonna watch on here.
Americans and
it wasn't working earlier, but I got it work now.
6 million.
Oh wait, I paused.
Billion illegal.
Looks like they're doing opening statements right now. I'm watching it on another screen too, so I'm gonna pull it up as a backup just in case.
Finish the wall.
Yeah.
Reinstate Title 42 and get the job done.
Well, I can promise you,
well, we didn't miss
going
much.
to have a lot of questions on the border and immigration. But in the meantime, we do want to talk about the economy and jobs, and especially want to talk about this strike for just a moment more. Mr. Ramaswamy, you've said you really empathize with the strikers. You're standing next to Senator Scott. And do you agree with what he said, or do you think he's wrong?
I agree with some of what he said, for sure. I like the spirit of it. I'll say that I don't have a lot of patience for the union bosses. I think that's where he and I actually have a common view. I do have a lot of sympathy for the workers, however. People are going through real hardship in this country. I've been through hardship growing up. My father stared down layoffs at GE under Jack Welch's tenure at the GE plant in Evendale, Ohio. My mom had to work overtime in nursing homes in Southwest Ohio to make ends meet and pay off our home loan. So I understand that hardship is not a choice. But victimhood is a choice, and we choose to be victorious in the United States of America. You know what, if I was giving advice to those workers, I would say go picket in front of the White House in Washington, D.C. That's really where the protest needs to be. Disastrous economic policies that have driven up prices, that have driven up interest rates and mortgage rates. At the same time, wages remaining stagnant. What we need is to deliver economic growth in this country, unlock American energy, drill, frack, burn coal, embrace nuclear energy, put people back to work.
You see how he doesn't call out the union bosses?
More money to stay at home.
I mean,
stabilize the U.S. dollar itself and rescind a majority of those unconstitutional federal regulations that are hampering our economy. That is how we unleash American exceptionalism. And that's not a Democratic vision or a Republican vision. That is an American vision that we embrace economic growth, and capitalism is still the best system known to man to lift us up from poverty, and we should not apologize for it. That's what it means to be an American.
So it's corporate greed. They're making record profits while not paying their workers the way they should be paid. That's the problem. He doesn't mention that.
Ford and Stellantis make 336 times the number of number of rank and file workers. That's just part of a wider income inequality trend in the country. The richest 1% now controls 1/5 of all income. Vice President Pence, last week you said you side with American workers, but you also support how these companies operate. Which is it?
Well, thank you for the question. I want to thank Univision and Fox Business for assembling such a wonderful forum. Look, I do disagree with something Tim Scott just said. Joe Biden doesn't belong on a picket line. He belongs on the unemployment line.
Boo!
Look, I'm from the second leading manufacturing state in the country per capita. I was governor of the state of Indiana. We brought 12,000 factories back to America during our administration. I know something about manufacturing. And I got to tell you, while the union bosses are talking about class warfare and talking about disparity in wages, I have to tell you, I really believe what's driving that is Bidenomics has failed. Wages are not keeping up with inflation. Auto workers and all American workers are feeling it, and families are struggling in this
Answer the
economy.
question.
And Joe Biden's Green New Deal agenda is good for Beijing and bad for Detroit. We ought to repeal the Green New Deal, get rid of the mandates and subsidies that are driving American
Not even
gasoline,
close to answering the
automotive
question.
manufacturing into the graveyard. And beyond that, also, as President of the United States, I'll be standing with workers all across America, and I'll be standing for the right to work of every American to join a
anti-union
union or not
policy.
join a union as they decide.
Senator Scott, you were mentioned. Would you care to respond?
There's an anti-worker answer.
Joe Biden needs to be fired. That's why I'm running for president. I look forward to being the next president of the United States. I will also say, I know America can do for anyone what she's done for me. It's why we're focusing on restoring hope, creating opportunities, and protecting the America we all love. Growing up in a single-parent household, I wondered if the American dream would work for a kid in the
Shut
inner
up.
city. I've got good news for every single child, whether you're in the inner cities of Chicago or the rural parts of Iowa. America and the dream, it is alive, it is well, and it is healthy. God bless these United States of America.
Our politics is so it's
I
so
think we need to
bankrupt.
look at exactly what
This shit is
happened.
they're
Biden
just
showed up
saying
on that
one-liners like this is a
But why are
Batman
those
movie.
workers
That's all they're
actually
doing.
there?
Just
It's because of all
one-liners.
of the spending that he has pushed through in the economy that's raised the inflation. So when you look at the fact that we are paying higher gas prices, higher grocery prices, $7,000 more a year for families, what we need to do is I came out with an economic plan, eliminate the gas and diesel tax so that they have more money in their pocket. Let's focus on going after middle America and cutting taxes for middle America and collapsing those brackets. Let's
The problem is capitalists stealing the labor value of the workers. Workers will be able to afford food. The quality of life will increase if capitalists stop stealing our labor value. You guys see how they tapping around that?
made those temporary. They made the corporate taxes permanent. Let's focus on what it takes to get more cash in the pockets of workers. That's when we'll be
I don't
able to
think you
deal
guys
with
care about
strikes
hearing
like
anything she
this,
said,
not
right?
sitting on a picket line like Joe Biden is.
Thank you, Governor.
Not
We
sitting
have
on a
questions to
picket line.
get to
Like
about
they're
the
not
economy.
gonna win this argument about the picket line. They need to just move off the union
Sorry, I have
stuff.
to jump in because we're missing the point, and every other network is missing the point. The reason why people are striking in Detroit.
Who are
is
you?
because Joe
Who the
Biden's
fuck is this guy?
interference with capital markets and with free markets. The subsidies, we're subsidizing
Really?
the auto.
Why are they, Nick? Why are they trying to pretend like it's Joe Biden's policy? We've been at 725 for how long? What are you talking about?
Exactly.
We've been at 725 that had nothing to do with Joe Biden. What are you talking about? That his policies is why they're out here picketing. They're just making up just nonsense.
Because they're measured in parts per million. China is moving 100,000 pounds of earth in Indonesia, in Africa. They're literally destroying the planet so that they can make a battery that's in a car subsidized here. That's why they're striking, because they need 2/3 less workers to build an electric car. Joe Biden, this strike is at Joe Biden's feet.
No, it's class war. That is literally what they said. The UAW literally said class war, and they're trying to redirect it. He even brought up China.
Christie, the government will shut down if Congress does not reach a deal by the end of this week. Vice President Pence warns that politics of, quote, Trump's populist proteges, like Mr. Ramaswamy, are a road to ruin for the GOP. If the government shuts down, should voters blame populist Republicans?
Voters should blame everybody who's in Washington, D.C. They get sent down there to do the job, and they've been failing at doing the job for a very long time. And let's be honest about this with the voters. You know, during the Trump administration, they added $7 trillion in national debt. And now the Biden administration has put another $5 trillion on and counting. They have failed, and they're in the spot they're in now because none of them are willing to tell the truth. None of them are willing to take on the difficult issues. They just want to keep kicking the can down the road. And the inflation that Nikki spoke about is absolutely right, and it's caused by government spending. And that's why people all across this country are suffering tonight. And yet we don't get any answers because Joe Biden
It's funny how they say it's government spending, but it's never the government spending in military concern. I guarantee he's not talking about the $115 billion sent to Ukraine, but he's talking about government spending on your schools, on your roads, on your freeways. We're spending too much on the peasants. Go ahead.
Yep.
Or
I
the
know it's
video,
hard to see,
whichever.
but I saw some people ask. There's subtitles right here. I wish it was bigger, but Fox News got some subtitles on the.
I can take. When you take that our banner down, maybe you can see a little better.
Everyone in Washington D.C. who has failed to do their job and just plays to the grandstand.
The next question is for Governor DeSantis.
Rebel.
Here's how we get it done in Washington. We must find a way.
Can we please respect the time?
We can get it done.
Governor DeSantis, you haven't spoken. Please.
The people in Washington are shutting down the American
Governor
dream
DeSantis
with
is
their
there?
reckless behavior. They borrowed, they printed, they spent, and now you're paying more for everything. They are the reason for that. They have shut down our national sovereignty by allowing our border to be wide open. So please spare me the crocodile tears for these people.
shit.
They need to change what's going on. And where's Joe Biden? He's completely missing in action from leadership. And you know who else is missing in action? Donald Trump is missing in action. He should be on this stage tonight. He owes it to you.
What are we talking about? What is the question here?
Where they added $7.8 trillion to the debt. That set the stage for the inflation that we have now. I can tell you this, as governor of Florida, we cut taxes, we ran surpluses, we've paid down over 25% of our state debt, and I vetoed wasteful spending when it came to my desk. And as your president, when they send me a bloating spending bill that's going to cause your prices to go up, I'm going to take out this veto pen and I'm going to send it right back to them.
Ilya, you mentioned me in your question. I just want to address that.
brought up our administration flaw.
He's terrible, man. There's no way he's going to win. He's
I know
terrible.
that you've been thinking about it because childcare costs, they are up. They're topping $10,000 per month. Some families are spending up to half of their income on childcare. And they're having to decide, is it worth it for me to work or does it not make sense for me financially? In 3 days, the billions of dollars in pandemic-era funding is going to end, and 70,000 daycares could close. So you had an effort to broaden eligibility for child care assistance. That fell apart last year. And for the moms and dads out there who are worried, what can you tell them if you weren't able to get it through the Congress? How could you do it as president?
Certainly one of the things I did as a member of Congress was to make sure that we protected the Head Start programs around the country, giving people the opportunity to pick and choose the place that they send their children. The challenges that we see today under the Biden administration is that the cost for daycare has gone over $15,000 per child. In the Build Back Broker plan, he called it a Build Back Better plan, it was going up to $29,000. The way we fix that problem is to make sure that we actually cut taxes and give more Americans their money back. When I helped write the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, we actually lowered a single mother's taxes by 70% on the federal level. For dual income households,
if you believe that shit,
what about cost of healthcare?
You can't believe any. The way they're describing what they're doing is just simply not accurate. It's just a lie. You can't go off of what these politicians, what they describe.
Let the American people keep their money. When that happens, the greatest opportunities rise from the ashes.
Okay, I need to jump in here.
They talk about cutting taxes, but what about the private healthcare tax they pay? What about the private childcare tax they pay that they don't pay in other countries in Europe? But I'll let
Republicans on this stage. And in the Reagan Library, I want to say these are good people on this stage.
Boom.
The real divide is between the majority of us in this country who love the United States of America and share our founding ideals. Free speech, meritocracy, the idea you get ahead in this country, not in the color of your skin, but on the content of your character, and the fringe minority in the Democrat Party that has a chokehold over that party.
The highest
That's the real
level.
divide. So this
Right
populist
here.
versus
Immigration and the border.
artificial.
You know that
divide
is
unites this
a
country.
coon to the highest level.
We are going to talk about immigration and the border. And
Exactly.
I think we're going to go on. We have all these questions. We're going to get to you. We're going to come back to you. There's a lot of time.
We're about childcare. Nobody answered the question. In North Dakota, we knew that the cliff was coming. We knew that there was going to be millions of people.
Are
about it.
you?
And so guess what? We planned.
Yeah, why do you keep interrupting nobody?
Sir, we will.
Why do you keep
Questions,
interrupting?
but you're going to have to let us move on. We are going to the
There's a
border.
reason why they're not calling on you because
Sir,
no
can
one
we
knows
please-
who you are.
I haven't been given a chance to
In
respond.
1984, President Ronald Reagan said the following:
The idea of amnesty for those who have put down roots and who have lived here, even though sometime back they may have entered illegally.
2 years later, President Reagan granted amnesty to nearly 3 million immigrants.
He did it twice.
Something no
He did it
Democrat
twice.
or Republican president has done since. Governor Christie, as governor of a non-border state in 2010, you supported a path to citizenship. But when you ran for president in 2016, you flipped, saying immigrants should be tracked like FedEx packages. Where do you stand now on a path to citizenship for 11 million of undocumented immigrants?
No, I'm gonna let it answer, then I'll say my
No
thing.
one has done anything since we first had this discussion 13 years ago. We're not in a position to be able to do any of that anymore. What we have to do now is first treat this like the law enforcement problem it is. Our laws are being broken every day at the southern border, every day. And Joe Biden and his crew is doing nothing about enforcing that law.
ICE more
They
than
are letting
Trump.
it go. And by the way, they announced during the
He's funding the
presidential
border
race
security
that
more
we're
than
going to let it
Trump.
go. And we need to have a president who acts like I did as governor. Enforce the law.
Close the bridges
first
like
and
you did.
foremost. And that means what I'll do on day one is sign an executive order to send the National Guard to partner with Customs and Border Patrol to make sure that we stop the flow of fentanyl over the border, but also to make sure that we send a much different message.
That same thing
We
Biden
want
did.
you here in this country to fill the 6 million vacant jobs we have. But
Now I'm gonna say this real quick. I want you guys to understand the neoliberal response to immigration has failed. Pumping money into ICE, border security, in a police state does not work. So when you have Biden comes in, he's funded more than Republicans, and it doesn't work. Trump funded more than Barack Obama. It doesn't work. You guys need a new answer. Like even if you come in and fund ICE more, you're gonna have the same problem because the neoliberal capitalist approach towards immigration does not work. It doesn't matter who's president.
that he was only going to build 52 miles, they might have paid for the 52 miles.
Thank you, Governor.
All right, Governor Haley. Most illegal immigrants are coming from countries south of the border. You've seen the Fox News drone. It's captured the steady stream of people coming into the country on a daily basis. In fact, I believe we have a live picture of it tonight. That is happening right now, live. In the last decade, the U.S. has spent nearly $55 billion to address the root causes of migration. But crime, poverty, and corruption, they persist, and the number of migrants is only
This is a scare
growing.
white people
Are we
segment.
wasting our money?
Well, what happens is when Joe Biden waved the green flag, it told everybody to come. And now we've seen 6 million people cross the border. We've had more fentanyl that have killed Americans in the Iraq,
let it
Vietnam,
play
or
in the sound.
Afghanistan wars
You have
combined.
some of the
We need to
leading
make sure that
coons on
we
the
are a
stage.
country of laws.
Lee
The second
Haley
we stop being a
and
country of
Vivek
laws, we give up
Ramaswamy
everything this country was
have
founded
some of
on.
the most
So we
hardline
have to secure the
stances
border. The
on
way we do that
immigration.
is, first of all,
That's some
defund
coon-ass
sanctuary
shit
cities.
right
You
here.
see what's happening in Philadelphia right now. It's got to stop. We need to make sure we put 25,000 more Border Patrol and ICE agents on the ground and let them do their
What?
job. I spent 400 miles down that border, and I'm telling
They
you,
do
Border Patrol
nothing.
agents aren't allowed to do their job. Let's go.
They aren't
back
allowed to
Remain in
kill
Mexico
and
policy.
torture them, huh,
Instead
Nikki?
of catch and release, let's
And
go
that's
to
not
catch and
even true.
deport.
What about
and
the
let's
aid
make
that we
That's not even true.
what about the aid that federal taxpayers are paying to deal with the root causes? It's not working.
The
Or is
only
it?
aid that we should be spending right now is to secure the border, the southern border, the northern border, period.
You would cut
We
off
need
aid
to
to the
keep
region?
Americans safe. And right now, Americans are not safe. Only when we fix the immigration system, only when we get the border secure, should we ever look at putting any more
You know
money
the
into
United
this.
States
Our
only
money
has
should
this
be about
obsession with
keeping
the
Americans
border.
safe.
It's a
We're
clear,
not doing that. Joe Biden's not doing that. And you
indication that
mentioned
we're
Congress
we're a
and
white
shutting down
supremacy
government.
country.
I'll make it
Keep
clear.
the
We
Negroes
have to
and the
change
brown
the budget
people the fuck
process
outta here.
in 4 years. In 40 years, Congress has only delivered a budget on time 4 times in 40 years. If they don't keep the government open, they should not get paid. No pay, no budget. That's the way we should.
Governor DeSantis, we have
What
a
is the
question for you.
question?
Governor DeSantis, China invested $12 billion
let's hear this
in
one.
Latin
Let's hear this
America just last year. They signed
China.
strategic partnerships
we
with
go.
7 countries, including
going at
Mexico.
BRICS. He's going at
And China's
BRICS.
military ties to the region now include arms sales and training exercises. Are you comfortable with China deepening ties with our southern neighbors?
Of course not. And the reason why we're in this mess is because elites in DC for far too long have chosen surrender over strength when it comes to the CCP. Some people in our country got rich, our industrial base got hollowed out, and they have been able to build the second most powerful military in the entire world. We need a totally new approach to China. We are going to have real hard power in the Indo-Pacific, like Reagan, to deter their ambitions. We're going to have economic independence from China, where we're decoupling our economy,
but
and
China
we are going to
can't
go
do
after the
business in Latin
cultural
America?
power they have in this country. As governor of Florida, I banned the CCP from buying land in our state. We should do that all across these United States. We shouldn't have them in our universities. We shouldn't have Confucius institutes. So you see a country in decline, our power's in decline. China's going to surpass us this decade, and if they do that, that's going to affect every single American household. As your president, I am not going to let that happen. I'm going to reverse this.
How are you going to? How exactly are you going to stop BRICS, sir?
When it comes
how?
to the CCP.
What are you going to do?
Under Joe Biden, we are a country in retreat.
Propose, quote, universal deportation for all undocumented immigrants and their children, even if the children are citizens of the United States. Under what legal premise would you expel?
What is she there for, Nick? I gotta say this.
First thing I want to say is I agree with
why are
everything
you
the Republicans
there?
on the
Like,
stage on the right side of this issue.
Like you're out of place. You're
Militarize
asking
the southern
questions
border.
that
Stop funding
they don't give a
sanctuary
fuck
cities,
about
and
immigration.
end
They don't
foreign aid
care
to
about
Mexico and Central America to
immigration.
end the incentives to come across. But I do go a step further. You're right about that, Ilya. I favor ending birthright citizenship for the kids of illegal immigrants in this country. Now, the left
going on?
That is
I did not tell you. The person of color always got to be like, oh, white guy, you think you white supremacy? Let me show you some shit, motherfucker. And that's what he's doing.
And subject to the laws and jurisdiction thereof are citizens. So nobody believes that the kid of a Mexican diplomat in this country enjoys birthright citizenship. Not a judge or legal scholar in this country will disagree with me on that. Well, if the kid of a Mexican diplomat doesn't enjoy birthright citizenship, then neither does the kid of an illegal migrant who broke the law to come here. And as the father of two sons, it is hard for me to look them in the eye and say, you have to follow the law when our own government fails to follow its own laws. That's how we really go the distance and solve this problem and restore the rule of law in the United States of America, because that is part of what it even means to be an American.
Senator Scott, you oppose ending birthright citizenship. What does Mr.
Freaking New York has $1 billion freaking budget for police. What are you talking about,
It's certainly written as it relates to slavery, not as it relates to illegal immigration. It's been applied to illegal immigration. So the challenge that we face is, in fact, one that has to do with whether or not the people that come here are under the jurisdiction of our laws. And frankly, if you come here illegally, you are not. Now, surviving a Supreme Court argument is something I can't tell you. But from a perspective of the Constitution, I think it's simple that clearly it was designed for slavery and not for illegal immigration. I'll go one step further, though. When we have a conversation about the things that are happening on this stage, we think about the fact that Vivek just said we were all good people, and I appreciate that, because last debate, he said we were all bought and paid for. And I thought about that for a little while and said, you know, I can't imagine how you could say that knowing that you were just in business with the Chinese Communist Party and the same people that funded Hunter Biden millions of dollars was a partner of
Coon goes after Coon. Coon on Coon crime right here. This is some Coon on Coon crime.
These are good people who are tainted by a broken system, and it's not the fault of anybody who's involved.
Some of us are tainted.
Excuse me. Thank you for speaking while I'm interrupting while I'm speaking.
You said about
If I may finish.
You can't be on both sides.
Gentlemen, you'll have your turn.
One of the challenges
we should please focus on the issues that matter. We know we did business in China. Everybody knows that.
If I may
focus on holding Joe Biden accountable. That's what we need to be.
I actually agree with Ron DeSantis.
Everybody speaking at the same time. No one can.
So if I may, I agree with Ron DeSantis on China. When every other CEO expanded into the Chinese market, you know what I did with my first company? We opened a subsidiary in China. But you know what I did that was different than every other company? We got the hell out of there. And when I started my
Yeah,
next
right before
company,
you ran for
Strive, right when it, years ago,
I don't think that's a good moment
right when
for
I started
feedback
my
right
next
there.
company, Strive, to compete against BlackRock, excuse me, to compete against BlackRock, I made a commitment that we would never do business in China. And I will say something.
Yes. I think you have more than time to explain your point.
Well, if I was interrupted by a lot of people here, and I want to be respectful because I believe these
You were
are good
respectful
people,
last debate.
but I do not believe in these. We're sitting here in the Reagan Library.
Yes, I wish you
in
did
the
not think it
honor
was
of
midnight
Ronald
in
Reagan's
America.
library.
Oh,
if I
what
may,
a weak
from one,
cut.
Tim, from one admirer of Ronald Reagan to another.
You scared of Tim
From
Scott,
one admirer of
Sam?
Reagan to another.
Did
We
you not
cannot
do
see
deals
these
with the
Reagan laws
CCP
violate
4 years
Reagan's
ago?
11th
This isn't
commandment.
productive.
I want to hear about that.
Let's have a policy debate.
What's going on?
Let us have a
It doesn't
policy
actually
debate.
matter.
Let's have
about their records.
Let's have a policy debate. And the right answer
Mr.
is
Ramaswamy,
we
I
need
have
to
a question
declare
for Vice
independence
President
from China,
Thank you very
and I will
much.
see that through.
Vice President Pence,
Finally, a good
in
moment. That was funny.
2017,
That
the
was
Trump-Pence administration canceled DACA, which put the legal status
I'm gonna
of
say this.
600,000
Tim Scott, remember how he got
dreamers in the
offended
hands
when
of the
Vivek
courts.
said he was bought off?
Dreamers
Tim,
work,
no
and
one
they pay
believes you're
taxes.
not bought off.
As
No one
president,
believes that.
if the Supreme Court ends DACA, would you work with Congress to reach a permanent solution?
You
for
see what I
dreamers?
mean? Like, you see,
Well, first,
she
let me
is
say I'm glad
obviously
Vivek
asking about
pulled out of his
immigration to
business
fix
deal in
it.
2018
The
in China.
Republicans
That must
don't
have
want
been
to
about
do
the time
that.
you
It
decided
feels like
to
she
start
shouldn't
voting
be
in
there to
presidential
ask this
elections.
question.
So we're nice to have you
I'm gonna address that in a
participating in
second, too.
elections. So let me speak to this.
Man, they
issue.
gonna
Number
have to beat
one, I negotiated the Remain in Mexico policy with the Mexican government. We used economic power to bring the Mexican government to the table. We built hundreds of miles of border wall. And despite what's said here today, we reduced illegal immigration and asylum abuse by 90%. And as President of the United States, I can do it again. And the truth is we need to fix a broken immigration system, and I'll do that as well. But first and foremost, a nation without borders is not a nation. And we have to secure the southern border of the United States of America.
What happened pre-1900 then, Mike Pence? What happened pre-1900, pre-18? What
One other
happened?
thing about China.
Would you negotiate with Congress to
Borders are used to control
give a
workers,
solution
not
to the
risky.
problem that dreamers have right now? They are on a limbo.
Well, let me tell you, I served in Congress for 12 years, although it seemed longer. But you know, something I've done different than everybody on this stage is I've actually secured reform in Congress. You know, Ron, you talk a really good game about cutting spending, but you've increased spending in Florida
politics
by
is
30%.
ridiculous. What is the
When I
purpose
was
of a
member
debate
Congress
if
in
the people
2006,
debating are allowed
right
not
after
to at
Hurricane
all
Katrina,
address
Dana,
the
you
issue?
remember it. We
Like, how
stood
is this
our
a debate?
ground. I
She
led House
followed up
conservatives.
and
We
said,
cut
hey,
$100
DACA
billion
question, are you going to
out
answer it?
of
He
the
just
federal
literally
budget.
skips
It
past
can
it.
be done, but
Starts talking
as I
about
said in the
something
last
else.
debate, I'll say again, this is no time for on-the-job training. I'm going to be ready on day one to get Congress to step up, secure the southern border of the United States, build a military fitted to our times, and we're going to get spending in Washington, D.C. under control once and for all.
We have to defend on the other side of this break, and I propose to go to a break. How will these candidates make America safer as rising crime plagues our cities?
Here we go with the crime.
In moments.
There's a lot of crime. Here we go. Nick, have you noticed they started going back to crime? I literally 2 weeks ago, I started noticing crime are back on the rise again after they just said that in 22, and then they admitted it wasn't true.
I
can't believe this.
I tell you guys this all the time. For one, Americans are fucking cowards. We spend more on our policing than every other country does, other than China does on their military. The New York Police Department spends 3 times more on their police than the North Korean military. You know the military you're supposed to be afraid of, CJ? They spend 3 times less than the NYPD. In my personal belief, if you don't feel safe in our country, despite the amount of money we spend on our police, you are a coward whose brain has been literally destroyed by 24/7 news channels, and you are so afraid of your neighbor, you want all our funds and resources to go back to the police. Like, that's absurd. That's absolutely absurd. But this is what they do every election. Every election, they say, we need to have more funding to go to the police in order to decrease crime, right? Whether crime goes up, whether crime goes down, based on their metrics, it does not matter. if crime goes down, they say, well, we're doing such a great job. Look at crime is down. So we got to give us more money. If crime is up, they say, oh my God, crime is out of control. Give us more money. No matter what happens, every election, they're going to give you more money. And now to what CJ said earlier, because we covered this a long time ago.
Yeah.
Before 2020, they were saying, oh my God, Democrats are defunding the police. And because of this, not 2020, but 2022. Before the 2022 midterm, Republicans was running on the idea that Democrats were trying to defund the police. And they were saying, oh, there's a crime wave because of this. And then after the election, after it was all said and done, they were like, oh, that's actually not true. We actually decreased crime. We just said that to get more funding. We reported on that a long time ago.
Yeah,
and
they admitted it. They admitted it on TV. Yeah, we saw it. Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, but that's what they do. It's nonstop. Our government, our society is a glorified arms dealer. There's no logical central planning. It's anarchy. It's anarchy, and then we're gonna establish a police state in order to keep people in control because they live in an unstable society. So instead of fixing the homeless problem, which costs literally like what, 2% of our military budget? 3%? Yep. I'm not a fucking math scientist, right? But it's like 2-3% of our military budget was solve homelessness. Instead of doing that, you got Republicans and Democrats, and we're gonna report on this probably tomorrow. We gotta do Nick CJ tomorrow instead of Friday. I'll talk about that later. They are pushing for the Supreme Court to overturn a court decision that will allow the police to forcibly evict homeless people, right? Now, guys, so to mobilize the police to do such a thing, how much would that cost? So I'm not even doing a moral argument. So, because CJ, you can easily make a moral argument against that.
Yeah.
Right? Logistically, it's going to take way more than $20 billion to do what you guys are trying to do with the police. The New York Police Department get paid they get $11 billion every year. That is one city. You guys could end homelessness with the amount of money you guys plan with your police initiatives, with the amount of money you guys spend on anti-homeless architecture. You can solve homelessness, but they don't, because our central planning model is anarchy. Anarchy ran by the capitalist class. You have capitalists that say, oh, we hate socialism. We hate central planning. There should be no central planning. We have central planning. The central plan is to sell arms and build a police state and get subsidies to rich people, corporate bailouts. There will always be central planning. Are you in the favor of anarchy or the dictatorship of the proletariat? Right? Anyway, debate started. I was ready for the debate start. Let's get to it. CJ, any last thought before we?
No, we can get to it.
No, they're not back on. Sorry, they tricked me. CJ, anything you want to add? I saw that lady come out. I thought she was asking a question, but
on my screen it is on. What are you?
Actually, yeah, it is on.
All the lawlessness, the shoplifting, all the carjackings, the armed robberies, they're all surging. Progressive prosecutors were elected by their constituents.
Can you rewind it?
Or
maybe you can't. You probably can't.
So what would you do to end the revolving door of criminality?
Oh, this is a crime question. I was trying to find it was a crime or was this a homeless question?
For 7 years, I ran the 5th largest office in this country.
I'll be right back to you.
The U.S. Attorney's Office in New Jersey, and we set records for the number of prosecutions that we brought that still have not been broken. And the reason was that we went after the crime that was affecting people's lives. And as president, I will appoint an attorney general and instruct that attorney general that you are to put all the resources that are necessary to bring our cities back under control. The fact is they will be stretched. There's no doubt about that, but that's what they take the job for, because they love the idea of enforcing the law. We've got to bring law and order back to this country. And not just in our cities.
What are they?
But we need law and order back everywhere. We need law and order back in our suburbs. People are threatened there. We need it in our rural areas. People feel threatened there. And we need it in Washington, D.C. also. And Donald Trump should be here to answer for that, but he's not. And I want to look at that camera right now and tell you, Donald, I know you're watching. You can't help yourself.
This is the part that's going to be on Morning Joe tomorrow, okay? I can tell you right now, Chris Christie will be on Morning Joe.
You're not here tonight
going over this
because you're afraid of being on the stage and defending your record. You're ducking these things. And let me tell you what's going to happen. You keep doing that, no one up here is going to call you Donald Trump anymore.
And his poll numbers are going to go up.
Duck.
All right. I want to ask Governor DeSantis,
who wrote that joke? Huh?
A couple of prosecutor,
You hire
when you're
Sam
chief, but as
Cedar
governor, I mean,
to
sorry,
write
as
that
president, you would not have the ability to do that. How do you think about dealing with the root causes of crime, especially this revolving door of the
Y'all not
criminals
talking
that
about
just
the
get
root.
out and come back and commit another crime?
Well, the crime in these cities is one of the strongest signs of the decaying of America. We can't be successful as a country if people aren't even safe to live in places like Los Angeles and San Francisco. Just being in Southern California over the last couple of days, my wife and I have met 3 people who have been mugged on the street, and that would have never happened 10 or 20 years ago. In Florida, we back the blue. We support the men and women of law enforcement. They are keeping us safe. We have a 50-year low in the crime rate. And yes, when I had 2 progressive prosecutors that weren't following the law in Florida, I removed them from their posts, and the people of Florida are safer as a result of it. As president, I will use the Justice Department to bring civil rights cases against all of those left-wing Soros-funded prosecutors. We're not going to let them get away with it anymore.
Civil rights
we want to
cases?
reverse
They
this
just-
country's decline.
they just
we
say
need
whatever
to
they
choose
wanna
law
say,
and order
man.
over rioting and disorder.
On a related subject, Governor Haley, there's a nationwide policing shortage. Retirements are up, recruitment is in the tank, morale is at a record low. 3 years ago, you signed a pledge to support law enforcement. Now, pledges are a nice idea, but what's your actual plan to get more police on our streets?
Well, and I actually did it in South Carolina too. You know, what we knew in South Carolina was you take care of those who take care of you. We have to start taking care of law enforcement, but it's not just taking care of them with words. It's making sure that you also follow through on what they do. Right now, we have a lot of stolen guns on the street. Well, these law enforcement officers, they arrest these people and then they go and they're let out the very next day. So law enforcement feels like no one has their back. We have to start prosecuting according to the law. We have to make sure we have the backs of law enforcement, and we have to make sure that we're a country of law and order. But I want to go back to China because I don't think we spent enough time on that.
Oh, you want to be unhinged? We didn't be unhinged enough.
Against
Nikki,
China
let's
too.
going
You
back.
have a company, U.S. Antibiotics, that produces amoxicillin, the #1 antibiotic that we need. And right now, there's a company in Bristol,
If
Tennessee,
you don't feel safe
that
with the
produces
amount
that.
police
Yet
that we
our
have,
federal
you
government
are a coward
only
who
gets
would
it
never
from
feel
China.
safe.
We need to be focusing on
Period.
companies that produce in America
Stay
and
inside.
supporting those
Lock
companies
yourself
that
in your
produce in
room, you
America,
fucking coward.
not companies that are helping China.
Governor, we will be talking foreign policy later. Delia?
Thank
Yes,
you.
foreign policy,
We're going to
please,
stay in the
please.
topic of crime because it affects all of us. Governor
Oh,
Burgum,
really?
for the first time ever,
Big brain
the
stuff
Univision
there.
poll found that mass shootings and gun safety are one of
Big
the
brain
most
stuff from her.
important
Crime
issues
affects all of
for
us.
Latino voters. Mental health
You see what I'm
concerns
saying, Nick?
are
This
not
is another
unique
one.
to the
It's
United
like she's
States,
put there
but
to
gun
ask questions
violence is.
that they absolutely don't
What
give
is
one
your
fuck
specific
about.
plan to curb gun violence?
They don't care about gun
Well,
violence.
first we need to know is understand is I think that the liberal left seems to be
Who
just
is this guy
completely
anyway?
bent on prosecuting law-abiding citizens that are gun owners, because every solution they have to this is take away the Second Amendment rights of Americans, and somehow that's going to solve the problem. But all these cities that we're talking about that you showed the videos of tonight, they have some of the strictest gun laws in the country. So we know that that's not what's working. But what we have to do is get back to the core issues about the family. We have to get back to behavioral health and mental health. We've got to get back to actually enforcing the laws these people talked about. And like we've done in North Dakota, where we've got the goal and we're on the track to be the most military-friendly state in the nation. We've got the most military and the most support of what we're doing in terms of law enforcement, because the morale is down because we've been defunding the police, because they've been attacked in the press. The police have become the bad guys when they're the one.
They are the bad guys.
Why would you be a policeman if you
Let's
won't
Nick. We
respect
got to
them?
keep
Every
our
time I
attacks
see
up. If it's
policemen, the first
affecting
thing I
them,
say is thank you.
maybe this
And
is
so
the way
does
we
everybody else in my
defund.
family and
Defund
most
by
of the people in our
embarrassment.
state,
Go
because they
ahead.
know
Well,
we
to
have
be
to
clear,
respect
sir, the
the
police
people
are
that are out there
defunding
defending us every
themselves.
single day.
Yeah.
Because the morale is so
Swami,
low.
Mr. Ramaswamy,
We
according
did
to
that.
Customs and Border
We did
Protection,
that.
about 90% of fentanyl is seized at official border crossings, and 57% of the smugglers are U.S. citizens. How would you stop fentanyl
You see
brought
how
into
she
the
sat there
country,
to
mostly by U.S. citizens, through ports of entry?
There's two sides to this, and we have to be very honest about it. One is we do have to seal that southern border. Building the wall is not enough. They're building cartel-financed tunnels underneath that wall. Semi-trucks can drive through them. We have to use our own military to seal the Swiss cheese of a southern border. But we also have to be honest. There's a demand side problem in this country too, a mental health epidemic. I met family in Iowa, two parents, Kathy and Derek. They lost their son,
Nick,
Sebastian, 17 years old.
Established
He got
facts,
Percocet
and he
on
doesn't want to
Snapchat,
have to
and then he
address
died.
it.
Why did he die? Because it
Fentanyl's
was
being brought in
laced
by
with
Americans,
fentanyl.
sir.
That is closer to
Your whole
bioterrorism, not a
unhinged
drug
push
overdose.
about China
is
that we covered in
poisoning. So
another
it is our job
segment,
to make
sir.
sure that never happens.
What are you talking
but
about?
It's also our job to make sure that 17-year-olds don't turn to Percocet via Snapchat. We have to bring back mental health care in this country, not with pump and pharmaceuticals, but with faith-based approaches that restore purpose and meaning in the next generation of Americans. Many of them are getting it through social media. And this isn't a Republican point or a Democrat point, but if you're 16 years old or under, you should not be using an addictive social media product, period. This is something that we can both agree on, and we can revive both the mental health of this country while stopping the fentanyl epidemic that will kill more people this year than who died on 9/11. And I refuse to be a passive
She
bystander
already
sitting in the
said
White House like the
90% of
hollowed-out
fentanyl
hospital
is caught
we
at the
have.
border.
We will
He
step
just
up
skips
and
over
address
that.
this problem to stand for Americans and our children.
Why are you encouraging TikTok? Quit encouraging TikTok.
And Nick, I did a segment 2 days ago. Vivek wants to invade
I'm going to use
Mexico
the U.S. military
when he
to go
becomes
after
president.
the Mexican drug cartels. They are killing our
Oh,
people.
him too,
And the
him
stories
too.
that I've
These
seen in
people is
Florida, we had an
unhinged.
infant, 18
This
months.
is where they talk about
Parents
invading
rented an
Mexico.
Airbnb. And apparently the people that had rented it before were using drugs. The infant was crawling, the toddler was crawling on the carpet and ingested fentanyl residue and died. Are we just going to sit here and let this happen? This
I don't know.
carnage happen in
Are
our
you gonna,
country?
what about
I
the,
am
the
not going
kid
to
that
do
ingests
I
lead
guarantee you
from
on day one,
buildings
this
that was
border is
used?
gonna be
Oh,
a
what do
day
we
one
do about
issue for
that?
me as
Like this,
president, we're going to declare it a national emergency. Yes, we'll build the wall. We'll do remain in Mexico.
what
but those
about the
Mexican
kid that
drug
was
cartels
shot
are
by
gonna
the
be
police
treated like the foreign
accidentally?
terrorists.
Like, what are we doing about that then, Rosa? It's like just
All right, Vice President Pence. We're going to
Ron DeSantis is just terrible.
Vice President Pence.
$5 billion.
Just last month, Vice President Pence, you said if elected, you would repeal all Obamacare mandates. However, you also made that same promise in 2016. And at that time, Trump-Pence had congressional majorities for at least the first 2 years, and you did not deliver on that promise. So Obamacare, right now, it is more popular than ever. Why should Americans trust you, if you become president, to fix that, or is Obamacare here to stay?
Y'all
Well,
are
first,
still
let me speak
talking
to the
about
mass shootings issue, and then
Obamacare?
I'll answer that question. It's an important one, Dan.
2007, man?
Look,
How are
I'm
you
someone
still
that believes
talking
that
about
justice
Obamacare?
delayed is justice denied. And as a father of three, as the grandfather of three beautiful little girls, I am sick and tired of these mass shootings happening in the United States of America. And if I'm president of the United States, I'm going to go to the Congress of the United States, and we're going to pass a federal expedited death penalty for anyone involved in a mass shooting. So
And
that
you
they
think that
meet
is a
their
fucking
fate in months,
solution?
not years.
That's a
It is
solution after the
unconscionable
person is
that
dead?
Someone who does a mass
Parkland
shooting wants to
shooter,
die, Pence, you idiot.
is actually going to spend the rest of
They
his
wanna
life
die,
behind bars
motherfucker.
in
It
Florida.
doesn't stop
That's
anybody.
not justice. We have to mete out justice and send a message to these would-be killers that you are not going to live out your days behind bars.
I
You're going to
appreciate
meet
that.
justice in this system.
But does that mean Obamacare is here to stay?
Yeah, get to the question, bro.
Well, thank you for reiterating the question, because I'd love to answer it. Look, I think it's one of the choices here. You know, my former
clown is
running
that?
mate, Donald Trump, actually has a plan to start to consolidate more power in Washington, D.C., consolidate more power in the executive branch. If I'm president of the United States, it's my intention to make the federal government smaller by returning to the states those resources and programs that are rightfully theirs under the 10th Amendment of the Constitution. That means all Obamacare funding, all housing funding, all HHS funding, all of it goes back to the states. We'll shut down the Federal Department of Education. We'll allow states to innovate. We're going to revive federalism in America, and states are going to help bring America back.
Obamacare staying, but Stu, go ahead.
May I remind everyone to keep within their time frame so that we can get as many questions in as possible.
Mike Pence, just go home
Governor
now.
DeSantis, over 26 million Americans don't have insurance coverage. Governor DeSantis.
And they don't give a
2.5
fuck.
million of them are in your state. That's worse than the national average. Can Americans trust you on this?
Well, I think this is a symptom of our overall economic decline. Everything has gotten more expensive. You see insurance rates are going through the roof. People that are going to get groceries. I spoke with a woman in Iowa, and she said,
Here we go, another not answering the
I'm
question.
having to take things out of my grocery cart when I get to the checkout line because the total goes up so quickly. So this is very real, and people are hurting out there. So we've got to address the underlying problem with Bidenomics, the overspending, taking all Biden's rules and regulations. I'm going to throw them in the trash can on day one. You're not going to have to worry about that. We're going to open up all of our energy. We will be energy dominant in this country. That will lower your gas prices. And what we need to do with healthcare is recognize our healthcare is putting patients at the back of the bus. We have big pharma, big insurance, and big government, and we need to tackle that and have more power for the people and the doctor-patient relationship.
Governor, why is your record in Florida on insurance worse than the national average?
Our state's a dynamic state. We've got a lot of folks that come. Of course, we've had a population boom. We also don't have a lot of welfare benefits in Florida. You know, we're basically say this is a field of dreams. You can do well in the state, but we're not going to be like California and have massive numbers of people on government programs without work requirements. We believe you work and you got to do that. And so that goes for all the welfare benefits. And you know what that's done, Stuart? Our unemployment rate is the lowest amongst any big state. We have the highest GDP growth amongst any big state. And even CNBC, no fan of mine, ranked Florida the #1 economy in America.
He doesn't answer the question at all.
Governor Haley, healthcare is the leading cause of bankruptcy for
Here goes
American
another
families, accounting
question
for
they don't give a
2/3
fuck
of
about
all
right here.
personal bankruptcies. As president, how you protect Americans who get sick from financial ruin?
First of all, how can we be the best country in the world and have the most expensive health care in the world? We have an issue. My mom was in the hospital, and when she was in the hospital, they tried to bring her a couple of Tylenol. And she said, I don't need it. And they said, honey, go ahead and take it because you're paying for it anyway. Why is it that when we got the bill, the insurance company and the hospital negotiated the bill for her without her having anything to do with it? When I am president, we will break all of it, from the insurance company to the hospitals, to the doctor's offices, to the PBMs, to the pharmaceutical companies. We will make it all transparent, because when you do that, you will realize that's what the problem is. Second thing is you've got to deal with tort law. The doctors don't give you the 10 tests because they want to. It's because of the 90% chance they'll get sued. And then we need to bring competition back to healthcare, get rid of certificate of need systems, and make sure that they can compete. We have to put the patient in the driver's seat. They've been in the back seat for way too long. And once we give the patient the ability to decide their health care, deciding which plan they want, that is when we will see magic happen. But we're going to have to make every part of the industry open up and show us where their warts are, because they all have them, and we need to fix this.
You have the right to get ripped off by health insurance companies.
Do you have a better way in 30 seconds?
Well, yes, we're not talking about
give them health care.
We talk about why do we have the most expensive health care in the world? It's because the federal government got involved the same way they did with EVs, and they said, we're going to subsidize a particular kind of software back in 2008 under Obama. And they said, hey, we're going to do this. It's going to make everyone more productive. All of you that are watching have been to a doctor's office when the doctor's got his back to you and their hands on a keyboard. The only industry in the world that's ever absorbed $1 trillion of IT and became less productive, they saw less patients per day, is U.S. healthcare, because they were subsidizing a certain kind of technology. It wasn't about improving healthcare. It was about picking winners and losers. Every time the federal government's involved, whether it's higher education, healthcare, or now the auto industry, things get more expensive and less competitive.
That was a great transition, because we are going to move on the future of education in America. What's the government's role in finding a way forward? The second Republican debate rolls on from Simi Valley.
An informed patriotism is what we want.
These people are running to be the president of the United States, man. Like, if in a rational society, since you're running to be commander in chief, sorry, I had to step away from my desk for a second. But since you're running to be commander in chief, this debate should be, what do you think, CJ? I'll say 60% foreign policy. Like, if this debate is 2 hours, 1 hour and 10 minutes should be on foreign policy. That's my ratio. They're the president. All this shit they're talking about, they have no control over.
Yeah, that's Congress.
You should ask, what executive order are you going to do on education? What executive order are you going to do on immigration? Everything else is bullshit. Everything else is bullshit. The president controls foreign policy, especially since Congress abdicated that power to the president under George W. Bush, and then they made it worse. John Lewis did that, by the way, where they completely planted the ball to the president. So the debate should be 60% at least. What do you think, CJ? Should be 60%. They should be talking about China for 30. It should be a 30-minute nonstop conversation about China. There need to be exchanges between the candidates on where they differ. But this debate is a joke. Like that's why I'm like, I interrupted a lot because who cares? You're running to be president. Y'all should be debating Ukraine. The rest of this goddamn debate should be on Ukraine alone, CJ.
This is just another. It's just another. This is just another spoke in the wheel of why Americans are so, and they're stupid when it comes to politics. They're literally some of the most stupid or propagandized or whatever other word, if you want to use a nicer word to describe them, Nick. We are watching a debate that's not a debate. The people who are debating, Nick, what is the purpose of the debate, or what usefulness of a debate if I can say what's your name and you don't have to answer the question what's your name? You can just start talking about Kermit the Frog. You can just start talking about, Looney Tunes. You can just start talking about whatever. Like, this is such a non-debate. Nobody is getting substantive understanding of anything. This is why we don't know anything politically as a whole. This is why we fall for things, because we don't know enough, because our political discourse is this, where they're literally not answering a single question. Then you got Chris Christie, who was just here to talk about Trump. Like, nobody on the stage is serious about policy. Nobody on the stage, even the moderators, aren't serious. Maybe the one who has a bit of a Spanish accent, she seems to be really talking about, like, really trying to get answers. The other two are just kind of like throwing, red meat to their base. It feels. I mean, the last.
Sorry, go ahead, CJ. My bad. But sorry, go ahead.
No, just saying the last debate was terrible, but it's turned out to me to be better than this so far. It's turned out to be better.
Well, it's a shame that Trump is not here, man. But Trump doesn't have to be here because none of these people are winning after this kind of performance. That's why in MSNBC, especially Morning Joe, was in horror when they saw that Trump poll numbers went up after he did 10 last debate. This is like Vivek is doing his best to be a Trump cabinet pick. And like you said earlier, these people are actors who have the inability to debate and actually talk about their policies in a meaningful way. That's why there's no actual intellectual exchanges done here. You got 1 minute here, 1 minute here. Oh, no, 1 minute here. No. They can't defend what they're talking about in a long-form way. So this format helps them out to have short bullshit answers. It also helps them to avoid the question because there's no time to follow or any of that nonsense, right? So it's a complete waste of time. And that's why this quote-unquote democracy is a joke, because not only is this debate not a debate, it's the fact that debates like this don't happen all the time. Why do these debates only happen during the election years? That's my question. I said this a long time ago. Remember, CJ? I said you should have the Senate minority leader and the Senate majority leader. They should have a debate once a month about what the fuck you defend what the Democrats are doing. You defend what the Republicans are doing. And that's the bare minimum. At least a month where you have Chuck Schumer versus Mitch McConnell, Hakeem Jeffries versus Kevin McCarthy. And then you should have people like AOC and Martin Taylor Greene debate. There should be debates all the fucking time, because that's how you nail people down in their positions, how people will be held accountable. But they don't do this in their government because they can't defend their positions. We're going to cover this later. We're going to have Leon Cosgrove from the Gray Zone on. She called out AOC for her funding of Nazis, and she ran away. They can't defend their positions, like Jamal Bowman ran away when they were called out about the Gray Zone. But the debate back on, so I'm going to unmute, and we can get back to it.
There's chronic absenteeism, that's at record highs. And this has even been called education homicide.
Still no.
You say school choice is the answer, but South Carolina, your home state, still has not enacted universal school choice, and even the current expansion won't be fully implemented until 2027. Parents can't wait 4 years for a fix. So what would you do right now?
Well, and school choice isn't the only answer, but I'll tell you, it's not out of a lack of trying that we didn't try and get school choice in South Carolina. What I'll tell you, first of all, is we have to acknowledge the fact that 67% of our eighth graders are not proficient in reading or math. Over 80% of our eighth graders aren't proficient in history or civics. And recently they came out and said our 12 and 13-year-olds
so you can turn it down a little bit, and I'll speak.
In reading and
So
math
this
in
is what
decades. So the
this
first
is
thing
just
we've
a
got to do is
classic thing that capitalists do. They did the same thing with the post office. What they do, or the DMV, you defund said industry, in this case is the educational. That defunding, of course, is going to produce bad results. And then you go, look, we should stop defunding them. We should stop funding them. Look how terrible the results are. But it's the results because you're cutting funding. You're cutting funding, so the results are going to be terrible. Because then when the results are terrible, they go, look, school choice, to just extract more money out of the public school system. The Republican Party is trying to destroy public school education.
That's when we'll start to see a difference. But we've got to get parents back included. We've got to quit spending time on this DEI and CRT and instead focus on financial literacy, on digital literacy, and on making sure that our kids know what they need to do to have the jobs of the next generation.
On the subject of education, a question for Governor Christie. Students in your state are getting high marks on their report cards, but minorities are not doing well with math and reading. Black and Hispanic students averaging 29 points lower than white students in New Jersey. Would you address minorities first?
You have to address all students. And look, in our state, Stuart, frankly, before I was governor, that gap was close to 50%. And what we did was institute more charter schools and more Renaissance schools and more public school choice in New Jersey with innovative solutions
using
in cities like
the
Camden,
black
where now we
educational
took what was the
funding
worst
gap
school districts in
in
America
order to
during
entice
my
inner
time,
city
and we have
people
now
to
increased
destroy
that
the
by
public,
nearly
to help
40%
destroy the
in
public
terms of their
school
proficiency.
system.
It can be
You
done
see
when
that?
you give
That's
people
what you
choice.
do to people.
But
Like in
let's
these,
tell the truth
it's
to
like
everybody about what this
they're
is.
just looking at a black
public
mom, like
school
say my
system
mom,
is
she
no
is
longer
looking.
run by
Look,
the
I'm
public.
just trying to
It is run
provide
by
something
the
for my
teachers'
kids
unions
so they
in
can
this country.
survive this
Randy
fucking
Weingarten
hellhole
and her
here.
crew
So they're not thinking broadly, Nick. They're not thinking like, man, this choice of school choice is going to destroy the system. I'm just trying to find a way for my child. So people who are just trying to find a way for their child to have a chance,
that you could take
they're
the
using that,
stranglehold
Nick,
away
to
from the
have those
teachers union
people
every day.
help
They
destroy
have an
the
advocate
system.
inside the White
And
House
he
every
thinks
day
that's a good
for the
thing.
worst of their teachers, not for our
These
students
people
to be
are
the best
fucking
they can be.
scumbag on
A president of the United
top of
States is
scumbags,
to
man.
take on the teachers union. I did it in New Jersey, and I will do it as president of the United States.
Governor DeSantis, I have a question for you.
Are you going to address why black people are scoring so low?
Florida's new Black
Are you going to
History
address
curriculum
that?
says, quote, slaves develop skills which in some instances could be applied for their personal benefit. You have said slaves develop skills in spite of slavery, not because of it. But many are still hurt. For descendants of slaves, this is personal. What is your message to them?
So first of all, that's a hoax that was perpetrated by Kamala Harris. We are not going to be doing that. Second of all, that was written by descendants of slaves. These are great Black history scholars. So we need to stop playing these games. Here's the deal. Our country's education system is in decline because it's focused on indoctrination, denying parents' rights. Florida represents the revival of American education. We're ranked #1 in the nation in education by U.S. News and World Report. My wife and I, we have a 6, 5, and 3-year-old. This is personal to us. We didn't just talk about universal school choice. We enacted
This is personal
universal
to
school
you.
choice. We didn't just
What are you
talk
talking
Parents'
about,
Bill of
bro?
Rights.
Your
We
kids
enacted
is
the
going
Parents'
straight
Bill
to
of Rights.
private
We
school. What is he
eliminated
talking
critical
about,
race theory,
Nick?
and we now have
Your kids are going
American
straight.
civics and the
They ain't gonna set
Constitution in our
foot on a
schools
fucking
in a really
public
big
school
way,
campus.
just like President Reagan asked for in his farewell address back in 1989. Florida is showing how it's done. We're standing with parents, and our kids are benefiting.
Senator Scott, you oppose to these new standards. What is your message for Governor DeSantis?
There is not a redeeming quality in slavery. He and Kamala should have just taken the one sentence out. America has suffered because of slavery. but we've overcome that. We are the greatest nation on earth.
Here goes the
because
capitalism
we
has never
faced
existed without
our
slavery.
demons in the mirror and made a decision. So often we
Still
think that
hasn't.
all the issues, you talked about crime and education and healthcare, we always think that those issues go back to slavery. Here's the challenge though. Black families survived slavery. We survived poll taxes and literacy tests. We survived discrimination being woven into the laws of our country. What was hard to survive was Johnson's Great Society, where they decided to put money, where they decided to take the black father out of the household to get a check in the mail. And you can now measure that in unemployment, in crime, in devastation. If you want to restore hope, you've got to restore the family, restore capitalism, and put Americans back at work together as one
Nick,
American
I'm
family.
gonna have to take a break,
Our
man.
nation
This nigga said you got to
continues
restore
go in the right
capitalism.
direction. That's why I can say I have been discriminated against, but America is not a racist country. Never, ever doubt who we are.
Why are you saying that? Where was the question where you have to answer that? That's what a coon does. And nobody's even asking me about white supremacy, but I'm raising my hand to say I'm for it. What is
the 10.7 million students in over 18,000 public schools nationwide
the stupidity
have
literally
the
speaks for
ability
itself. It's so
to
ridiculous.
change their identity without parental notification.
Cultural
Governor
wartime.
Christie told Stewart last week that he would pass a federal law to protect parental rights. Would you try to do the same?
I have to be very clear about this. Transgenderism, especially in kids, is a mental health disorder. We have to
Nobody
acknowledge
even
the truth
asked
of that
you
for what it
about
is. I met two young women
transgenderism,
early in
man.
this campaign.
Parental rights in school.
Parents have the right to know. And you know what the hypocrisy of this is? Even New Hampshire failed to actually get past a piece of legislation here. The very people who say that this increases the risk of suicide are also the ones saying that parents don't have the right to know about that increased risk of suicide. And I'm sorry, it is not compassionate to affirm a kid's confusion. That is not compassion, that is cruelty. I met two
Nobody
young women,
asked
Chloe
about-
and Katie, early in this campaign, who are in their 20s, now regret getting double mastectomies and a hysterectomy.
Why is
One
the
of them will
president
never
talking
have
about this?
children. And the fact
This
that
is
we
my
allowed
question.
that to
And this is
happen
why
in
I'm
this
not
country
interested.
is
Why is the
barbaric.
president talking
So
about this
I will
issue?
ban
Trans
genital
kids in
mutilation
school,
or
they're not-
chemical
this
castration.
executive
on
authority
the
has nothing to do with
parents
that.
have
Why don't you guys talk
absolutely
about
no
China
right.
and
a federal law
Ukraine?
that says parents should have that right.
We are going to require
This is
states
the president.
absolutely
Why
have
they
to
talking
follow
about
that
this?
through.
Governor
We
Burgum just to
stand
follow
for
up on
parental
this
rights.
because
Yes.
This is
you,
not
you
the job
in
of
your
the
state, this
president.
is you
You
do
guys
not
are the
have a law
commander in
that says
chief.
parents
Why
can't
are
be
we talking
notified.
about this?
But you want to be president. Would you try to pass a federal law to say parents have that right?
I think this is a state's issue, but I do want to say something because all
Exactly.
night long we've been talking about
That
issues
answer right
about
there,
how it's
exactly like,
broken
why are
in
you talking about
Washington, and
this?
I respect
The
all of the
president
people on the stage here for their 100+ years of public service. Thank you. But the reason why we're not talking about education or healthcare or safety being a problem in North Dakota is because we have a business leader. I've got more experience as a business leader than I think this whole group combined. I know I've created more jobs than everybody else on stage, thousands
one
of
know who
high-paying
you
jobs
are,
that have
bro.
real meaning. So as a business leader, you come in and you treat the taxpayer like a customer. So in North Dakota, instead of fighting with the teachers unions, we actually created a K-12 coordinating council. Everybody gets in the room and the customer is
But
the
you do
student.
understand that this is an issue that many people in America really are concerned about,
It's
worried
not the
about
president's job,
parents
ma'am.
and notification
Not
in
his job.
schools.
Yes, and that's why we have 50 platforms of innovation. That's why we have states. There are certain things the federal government is supposed to do. It's not the Department of Education that needs to be assembled. We got to move it back to states. Do what we did in North Dakota. Instead of like, oh, here's a choice school and here's an old
The thing is, his
school, the
answer
old
not
way
even
where the
that
teachers union
bad
and the
because
kids
the
are trapped.
president is not
We
the
made
president's
every
job to
school
be
in
talking
North
about
Dakota an
trans kids in
innovation
school.
school.
You guys know what
Every
I'm
school
saying?
got out
I
from
don't
under the
believe
red
in this
tape
small
and the things
this
that
bullshit
help teach the
Reaganomics,
values
bro.
that we're trying to get,
But
like
we say
4-H,
this
like
is a state
FFA,
issue.
like
You don't know
NHS.
because why are you
They can get
asking
credit for all
the
that
president
stuff
this
in North
issue?
Dakota.
His
And by the
social
way, North Dakota
garbage.
is now at the
They had
top
no
of the
place in
median
the presidential
NP scores in the country right now.
Vice President Pence, the Department of Homeland Security warns that violence against LGBTQ plus people is on the rise.
Oh, here we goes another question they don't give a fuck about at all.
Community are 9
They don't
times more
care.
likely to be
They
victims
asked
of
Mike Pence
violent
too.
hate crimes. As president, how would you protect this community from violent attacks and discrimination?
Well, as President of the United States, I'll stand up for the safety and the civil liberties of every American from every background. And I want the American people to know that. But I want to answer the question as well, Dana, that you just asked Doug Burgum. Because by way of full disclosure, Chris, you mentioned the president's situation. My wife isn't a member of the teachers union, but I got to admit, I've been sleeping with a teacher for 38 years.
He was like, that question is so ridiculous. I'm just going to skip
full
it.
disclosure. Look, education is a state and local function. The state of Indiana had one of the very first school choice programs in the country. And when I was governor of the state of Indiana, we doubled it. And as chief of Indiana, let's be very, very clear.
Conversions in Indiana.
When the Linn-Mar Community Schools in Iowa had a policy where you had to have a permission slip from your parents to get a Tylenol, but you could get a gender transition plan without notifying your parents. I weighed in with a foundation. That's not bad policy. That's crazy. We're going to stand up for the rights of parents, and we're going to pass a federal ban on transgender chemical or surgical surgery anywhere in the country. We've got to protect our kids from this radical gender ideology agenda, and we've got to empower parents at the state level with the ability to choose where their kids go to school, whether it's public, private, parochial, or homeschool. You empower parents, and our schools will straighten up and reflect our values and focus on the basics faster than you could possibly imagine.
Next subject.
Can I just say one thing?
China is investing. If you talk over everybody, we lose time. China is investing heavily in their tech companies. $280 billion every year on semiconductor research and development. That is one CHIPS Act per year. Governor DeSantis, you say companies like Google and Meta have too much power. Doesn't going after them give China an edge?
No, I think you look at how our societies develop, they have huge amount of power over our society. They've cracked down on free speech. We're not saying you don't want them to do business, but you want it to be a free market. And right now they're monopolies. But this issue of China, I think, is really going to be fundamental. We have subcontracted out so much of our national needs to the CCP. We rely on them for a whole host of issues. We need to reshore and we need to decouple all those important industries. We need to get that back in the United States. They are our top geopolitical adversary by a country mile. Xi Jinping's got huge ambitions, not only in the Asia Pacific, but as you mentioned earlier, in our region. But ultimately, we've got to beat him on the economy. And so that's what we'll do as president of the United States.
How dare you have ambitions? I wanted to follow up on this because 22% of American workers fear their jobs will be lost to a robot. And you said in the past that the free market is the way to go. Would you retrain workers who lose a job to artificial intelligence?
Not even everybody can even answer it. Just one person answers.
What I think artificial intelligence offers us is an extraordinary opportunity to expand well beyond the productivity that we have now, and to have Americans be able to be involved in that revolution, Dana. You know, each time we have shown incredible innovation and progress in this country. What we've done with it is to expand all kinds of new, even unthought of opportunities for folks. Yes, we have to do retraining for folks who lose some of their jobs, and we should be doing that. And we should have more training available both at the county college level and the local level for people to be able to access it. So yes, I would be in favor of that. But this is a much bigger issue than that. We can't be afraid of innovation. America has been the great innovator of this world over the last 250 years, a technological innovator, a manufacturing innovator, and a freedom and governmental innovator. And that's why America has to continue to stand strong in the world, pro-innovation, pro-progress. And I will tell you this, as President of the United States, what I will do is to make sure that every innovator in this country gets the government the hell off its back and out of its pocket so that it can innovate and bring great new inventions to our country that will make everybody's lives better.
Mr. Ramaswamy, TikTok is banned on government-issued devices because of its ties to the Chinese government.
He's going back to China right here.
You joined TikTok after dinner with boxer and influencer Jake Paul. Should the commander-in-chief be so easily persuaded by an influencer?
So the answer is I have a radical idea for the Republican Party.
Because he has
We need to win elections. And part of how we win elections is reaching the next generation of young Americans where they are. So when I get into office, I've been very clear. Kids under the age of 16 should not be using addictive social media. We're
What are you
only
gonna
going to
do
ever
about that,
get
you
to declaring
authoritarian?
independence from China, which I favor, if we actually win. So while the Democrats are running rampant, reaching the next generation 3-1, there's exactly one person in the Republican Party which talks a big game about reaching young people, and that's me. And let me level with all of you. I'm the new guy here, and so I know I have to earn your trust. What do you see? You see a young man who's in a bit of a hurry, maybe a little ambitious, bit of a know-it-all, it seems at times. I'm here to tell you, no, I don't know it all. I will listen.
He is a person.
I will have the best people, the best and brightest in this country, whatever age they are,
in other words,
advising me. We will be probably many of the people on the stage included. That's how I built my companies. I want to be challenged. I want people who disagree with me. That's what makes America great, because we're not a perfect nation. We're founded on the pursuit of perfection. That is what makes America great. And that is why we will end it once we win this election.
I have to jump. I have to jump in here. I'm sorry.
No, you don't, man.
There's one person on this.
This is infuriating because TikTok is one of the most dangerous social
let me get
media apps
unhinged.
that we could have. And what you've got, honestly, every time I hear you, I feel a little bit dumber for what you say, because I can't believe that here you've got a TikTok situation. What they're doing is these 150 million people are on TikTok. That means they can get your contacts, they can get your financial information, they can get your emails, they can get text messages, they can get all of these things.
This is
China
very important for our party.
exactly what they're doing.
This is very important for our party, and I'm going to say
you've gone and you've helped China make medicines in China, not America. You're now wanting kids to go and get on the social media that's dangerous for all of us. You were in business with the Chinese that gave Hunter Biden $5 million. We can't trust you. We can't trust you. We can't have TikTok and
She is unhinged.
Mr. Ramaswamy, you have 15 seconds.
I think, excuse me.
You have 15 seconds, Mr. Ramaswamy.
Thank you. I think we would be better served as a Republican Party if we're not sitting here hurling personal insults and actually have a legitimate debate about policy following Reagan's 11th Commandment in his honor. And the answer is, that is what actually makes our country strong. And I believe in these people. These are good people on the stage. They disagree, but let's have a legitimate disagreement.
You are supposed to destroy Nikki Haley right now, man.
No, we cannot. Governor DeSantis, I'm going Sir, we will have to cut your mic, and I don't want to do that.
And you're like, come on, guys, let's
So Governor DeSantis, let me go to you. Experts say President Putin has ordered assassinations across Europe, cheated on arms control treaties with the U.S., and seeks to work with China to force our decline. President Reagan believed that if you want to prevent a war, you better be prepared to fight one.
President who?
Today, the Republican Party is at odds over aid to Ukraine.
Oh, shit, here we go.
The price tag so far is $76 billion. But is it in our best interest to degrade Russia's military? We pay annually on defense,
That's not happening,
especially when there are no U.S. soldiers in the fight.
It's in our interest to end this war, and that's what I will do as president. We are not going to have a blank check. We will not have U.S. troops, and we're going to make the Europeans do what they need to do. But they've sent money to pay bureaucrats' pensions and salaries and funding small businesses halfway around the world. Meanwhile, our own country is being invaded. We don't even have control of our own territory. We have got to defend the American people before we even worry about all these other things. And I watch these guys in Washington, D.C., and they don't care about the American people. They don't care about the fentanyl deaths. They don't care about the communities being overrun because of this border. They don't care about the Mexican drug cartels. So as Commander-in-Chief, I will defend this country's sovereignty.
But it's not a territorial dispute. It's never been a territorial
It is a territorial dispute.
Let her get unhinged. Nikki is coming in to get unhinged.
It's guaranteed. It's a loan. It is not 90% of the money that we send over there is loan. Well, we can talk about this.
He just said it out loud.
Oh, you a damn liar, man.
Is actually in the form of loan. It's not actually not paid by Ukraine. It's paid by the NATO, our NATO allies.
So I think it's a good topic.
I think it's a really good topic too. But I will say, let's debate the fact that our national vital interest is in degrading the Russian military. By degrading
it's
the
not.
Russian
He admitted that
military,
BlackRock
we
is about to
actually keep
own
our
Ukraine, by the way.
homeland
I
safer,
can't wait to cover
we
that
keep our
later.
troops at home, and we all understand Article 5 of NATO.
We have
When
to
in fact-
level with the American people.
I thought you said something about waiting until your turn to talk. So,
think that
hold
is a
on. So at the end of the day,
for you to
I'm
be
going
able
to
to
finish my, I'll be happy to
Go
debate
ahead,
with
and then
this.
I'll respond.
I'll look forward to this one right now. So at the end of the day, when you think about the fact that if you want to keep American troops at home, attack on NATO territory would bring us and our troops in. By degrading the Russian military, we reduce, if not eliminate, an attack on
No, that is not
NATO
true.
territory.
By having Ukraine join NATO, you increase the likeliness of Article 5.
The reality is
We
just
are
because
leveling with the
Putin is not Putin's an evil dictator does not mean that Ukraine is good. This is a country that has banned 11 opposition parties.
A win
that has
for
actually
Russia is
Finally,
a win
this
for
is getting
China.
out
Win for
in
Russia
their
is a
debate.
win for China.
Excuse me, Nick, you'll have
But
a chance.
I forgot you like
You'll have-
China. That's
nope,
why
you'll-
you're
you'll have-
Nick,
you'll have
you
a chance
think
in
it's
just a
you think
moment.
it's a
The
coincidence
voting
she's
person
cutting them
isn't
off on that
helping.
point? It's
China
not.
is the real enemy, and we're driving Russia further
This
into
part's
China's
good.
arms. We need a reasonable peace plan to end this, especially this is a country whose president just last week
Vivek,
was
if you
hailing
let
a Nazi in
Putin
his own
have
ranks.
Ukraine, that's a
You-
green
Nick,
light
I'm
for
telling
China
you,
to
I am
take
telling you,
Taiwan.
We need a
Mike
peace
Pence
plan.
and Nikki Haley knows what he's about to say, and they keep stopping him. They know exactly what he's doing.
Governor Christie, President Biden's first 2 years have brought China, Russia, and
Nick,
Iran
he was about to bring
closer
up the
together.
Nazi problem,
Are we focused
and Mike
too
Pence
much
knew
on
that, and he
Ukraine
stopped him.
and not enough on this threat from the new world order?
No, they're all connected, Stuart. They're all connected. The Chinese are paying for the Russian war in Ukraine. The Iranians are supplying more sophisticated weapons, and so are the North Koreans now as well, with the encouragement of the Chinese. The naivete on this stage from some of these folks is extraordinary. Look, I understand
wait to
people
do
want to go
a
and talk to
segment on
Putin. Guess
There's a
what?
lot to say.
So did George W. Bush. So did Barack Obama. So did Donald Trump. And so did Joe Biden when he said a small invasion wouldn't be so bad. Every one of them has been wrong. And the fact of the matter is, we need to say right now that the Chinese-Russian alliance is something we have to fight against, and we are not going to solve it by going over and cuddling up to Vladimir Putin. Look, Donald Trump said Vladimir
talking
Putin
about?
was brilliant and a great leader. This is the person who is murdering people in his own country, and now not having enough blood, he's now going to Ukraine to murder innocent civilians and kidnap 20,000 children.
Oh
And let me
my
tell you, if you
God.
think that's where it's
We
going to
already
stop,
debunked that.
if we give him any of Ukraine, next will be Poland. This is a guy who said, wait
You
one
are
second,
just
this is a guy in
making shit up,
1991
man.
who said that was the darkest moment in world history when the Soviet Union fell. Listen, everybody, he wants to put the old band back together, and only America
Christy
can
is
stop
fucked.
it. And when I'm president, we will.
You Republicans are not for this shit. You sound like a
I have
Democrat.
a question I think you're going to really like, or at least you have experience in it. And we need to talk about America's farmers because there is a foreign policy connection
motherfucker,
here.
no. We
The
were
U.S.
talking
and
about
China are in this
Ukraine.
fierce economic competition. It's hurting
Completely
American businesses,
unserious. This is
and there
unserious.
is
But we
blowback
don't
against
even
American
mention
farmers because China then
You only had
targets
one.
them
You only had
in
two people talk
retaliation.
about it.
How would you,
Can we
as
get
president,
everybody to answer the
protect
question on
American
Ukraine?
farmers and ranchers from that kind of retaliation from a foreign government like China?
Well, first of all, we've got the best farmers and
5
ranchers in
minutes
the
on
world right here in
Ukraine. No
America.
way.
If they have a
No
level
way.
playing field, they can outcompete anyone in the world. But this is part of the larger issue that we're talking about here, which is we're in a Cold War with China. The Biden administration won't admit that. But we're also in a economic war through what we're doing with agriculture and energy. And we're also in a war with them relative to cyber war. We get attacked every day in North Dakota, every state, every school district, our tribes, all being attacked every day
30
by
minutes
either
on Coastal
China,
War, 5
Russia,
minutes on
Iran, or North Korea. And now we've got a Biden administration whose whole policy is appeasement. They're out there,
No, it's not.
creating the world, making it less safe. $6 billion they traded for 5 people. They've just now set a price on anyone's head who's a tourist from America, who's a student from America, for kidnapping. If you want more kidnapping, put a price on it. And then they're also helping Iran get to have
I hope
more
this guy is not on the stage
closer to
next
nuclear
time.
weapon, which
He's
pushes
completely
all of the
useless.
Middle
He's
East closer to
completely
China and Russia. The whole thing is absurd. And then, of course, we're going to give Ukraine to Russia, and then we're going to give Taiwan to China, and think that's a
Ukraine is
foreign
not
policy
ours
that will make
to
our
give or
nation
not.
less less successful, make us more poor. And at the
What do you
core
mean
of all
we
that
giving
is
Ukraine
energy
to Russia? It's
policy,
not
because
ours.
China imports 10 million barrels of oil a day. They're the largest importer in the world, and we've had 4 cabinet members from the Biden administration there this summer, and none of them talked about U.S. energy. The first one to go to each of those countries was Kerry to talk about the folly of the climate policy, which is making the world less stable. It's empowering dictators. It's not about climate change that we need worried about. It's about the Biden climate policies that are actually the existential threat to America's future.
Thank you.
Can I speak about
Governor Haley, Mexico's president called who supports.
Here goes another question
sending
they don't
US
give a
military
fuck
into the
about.
country, quote, scoundrels. Mexico is the United States' most important trade partner and border security. You say you will send special operations to attack the cartels in Mexico. So,
Invading Mexico.
this means boots on the ground, drone strikes.
It means special operations. It's how we deal with our terrorists. And what you need to do is understand that Mexico's
So
not
the
being a
same
good
thing you're
partner
mad
if we
about
lost
Putin doing in
75,000 Americans last year. Mexico's not being a good partner if they're letting the cartels get away with what they're getting away
the
with.
same thing you're
What
mad
we
at
will do
Putin
is
for
we
doing
will
in
make sure that
Ukraine.
we send in our special operations, and we will take out the cartels, we'll take out their operations, we'll take out anything that's doing it. But we're going to go after China, because China
He's
is
the
the one
craziest
sending the
person on this
fentanyl in the
debate stage. I
first
want you
place.
guys to
And
understand
we
that.
will
She
end
is.
all normal trade relations until China stops sending fentanyl. And
that's
then
why
we'll do the
Morning Joe's
special
gonna love
operations,
her.
and we'll
I
get
bet
it from both sides. This is where President Trump went wrong. He focused on trade with China. He didn't focus on the fact that they were buying up our farmland. He didn't focus on the fact that they were killing Americans. He didn't focus on the fact
BlackRock
that they
and
were
Bill
stealing
Gates is buying
$600
our
billion in
farmland up.
intellectual property. He didn't focus on the fact that they put a spy base off our shores in Cuba. They didn't focus enough on the fact that all of our law
These
enforcement
people are
drones in America are Chinese, and we've got all these little surveillance cells. We need to start focusing on what keeps Americans safe. That hasn't happened in a long time. As your president, I will make sure every
Morning Joe
American
is
is
about to
safe, and we'll
love
do
her.
whatever
Oh, they
it
gonna
takes to
love
make
her.
that happen.
They're gonna love her tomorrow.
Dude, she's the craziest person on stage, but
You're all
liberals is about to
auditioning for
love
the
her.
job as president of the United States. You want to earn these votes. But the world's problems land in the Oval Office. During the presidential debates in the year 2000, neither Al Gore nor George W. Bush was asked about al-Qaeda. Yet, just 1 year later, al-Qaeda's attack on September 11th claimed nearly 3,000 lives. And the farther we get from September 11th, the closer we are to September 10th. Senator Scott, you have no executive branch experience. What has prepared you to protect the nation from a major man-made national security crisis?
One of the things I've had the good fortune of doing is
Bro, they
serving
really
on
spent
committees
5
in the
minutes on
United
Ukraine,
States
bro.
Senate,
I'm literally
like
so fucking
the
pissed, bro.
Senate Armed Services
I'm so
Committee.
pissed.
I'm on the Senate Foreign Relations
I think
Committee.
it's because
also
of
on
the
Finance
donors,
Committee
Nick,
and the Banking
because
Committee. Talk
they
about
don't
addressing
want
the
they
issue
don't
of
want the
fentanyl.
conversation
I've written
to
the
come up that
legislation, passed
because
it
there's a
through
lot
the
of Republicans
Banking
that's
Committee
not
and the
for it.
Senate that would freeze
So it's
the
like
assets
we
and
can't
sanction
even
the
really
accounts
talk about
of the
this
Mexican
because our
cartels.
donors are
There
for the
weapons that
war,
we
but we
have
got
within the
candidates
arsenal.
that's not
But
for
I
the
was
war.
able to get past
As you
22
noticed, they
bills
kept
bill
interrupting
in the
Vivek when he wanted to bring
authorizing
up how
Senate as it
Zelensky.
is.
He
I've
was about to bring up
also
the
understood
Nazi
without
thing, and they
question
interrupt.
the
They don't
fact
want
that
none of
if you
this
look
stuff.
at the
I think that's
details
why they
before
probably oh, let's
9/11,
move on.
there was
Vivek is going to bring up
information
Nazis. We need to
intelligence
move
that was
on.
available that
You're absolutely
suggested
right.
an attack was
Yeah,
coming.
they don't want that
Having the right
conversation.
intelligence partners with us is key to making sure that we prevent the next 9/11 from ever happening. Having that experience for the last 10 years is really important in getting the job done.
30 seconds to you, Mr. Pence.
Well, I think you asked a question about executive experience, and I think it's vitally important. And I stand before you today as a candidate for president because I think this country's in a lot of trouble. And you hear the fire on the stage tonight. You hear the fire in all of our voices. And it's because Joe Biden has weakened this country at home and abroad. This is a time for those of us that have the experience, the tested experience, and a commitment to the conservative agenda that Ronald Reagan brought forward in this party of a strong national defense, standing with our allies, standing up to our enemies, supporting limited government and traditional values, need to step forward.
Understood.
Because frankly, our party does face a time for choosing, as I said at the top of this debate, whether we're going to stand on the foundation of that conservative agenda that Ronald Reagan poured, or whether we're going to follow the siren song of populism unmoored to conservative
And now it
principles.
is a
I'm
time
the most
for-
experienced, most qualified, and most consistent conservative in this field, and I'm ready to lead America at home and abroad.
I
on
would
day
just
one.
turn their mics off, man. Just turn their mics
Go to a
off.
commercial break. Reagan built a coalition that lasted decades. Can any of these candidates do the same?
All right, let's go.
We'll
Let's
take that up when the debate continues.
Dude, I'm literally have to do a statement just on the foreign policy part alone. And this is what I was saying earlier. Nikki Haley is a absolute psychopath. She's the most unhinged.
She was the most unhinged.
So you guys understand, and this is the argument that I make, and I hold the United States and NATO accountable, because what do I say, CJ? Every country will behave the way that Russia is behaving if you had a hostile foreign policy power, finance CIA, you had the CIA fund Nazis in Ukraine to overthrow the government. You had NATO expansion to the Russian border. So every country would do what Russia is doing to protect their national sovereignty, correct? Now, these same people, these same neocons like Nikki Haley, who criticize Russia for invading Ukraine, even though there's Western influence involved, they want to invade Mexico, even though there's no foreign influence in Mexico. So you're allowed to invade Mexico? Mike Pence and Trump is allowed to sponsor a coup in Venezuela? But you guys want us to melt down over Russia. So if we all understand that Russia will behave in the way a state will behave if their sovereignty is threatened, shouldn't we hold accountable the people who threaten their sovereignty in the first place? Now, there's no international foreign power in Mexico. So the United States is intervening in Mexico with no threat. So it's also the same defense that Israel uses Syria. So you have Israel bombing Syria. They do it all the time. They said they got pro-Iran, anti-Israel fighters planted in Syria. So that's why they have to bomb them. And they have the right to bomb them. The United States support Israel bombing Syria because they view a hostile foreign threat arming hostile insurgents against them. The United States support that, CJ. So it's okay for Israel to bomb Syria, but they want us to have Putin derangement syndrome for him behaving the same way any other leader will behave in the situation. And she just admits it. And it's just absurd she don't see it. And CJ, you had a great point earlier. And I may do it like maybe tomorrow. We may just clip the foreign policy part and talk about it. Because I was literally biting, my tongue was almost off. I biting my tongue extremely hard because I didn't want to interrupt it too much. There's so much to break down, even though they only covered like foreign policy like 10 to 15 minutes. That is alone why I watched the debate. It's extremely frustrating. It's only that amount. But the foreign policy debate alone, there's a lot to take away from that. For one, they are terrified of Vivek and the right-wing criticism of the Ukraine war. And you mentioned this earlier. It's a great point. So they don't want the audience to hear how Zelensky was banning Orthodox Christians in Ukraine. They were banning churches, opposition parties. They banned democracy. They banned opposition media. If you say that, you can't argue that we're protecting democracy.
Right.
So soon as Vivek starts speaking about that, all of a sudden, the moderators allow interruption. And we covered this last time, CJ. Remember how the moderators will allow people to interrupt if it goes for the established interest. And remember, Bernie, during his debate, Pete Buttigieg interrupted him, and they allowed him just to speak over Bernie. So the moderators, they don't believe in civil debate. They will allow you to interrupt your competition if your competition speaks about something that is inconvenient. But sorry, I went for a while. There was a lot to break down. CJ, quick thoughts before?
Yeah, no, just to piggyback, that was glaring to me that because you like if I can hear what he's saying and I can just tell, oh, those 3 words, I know what he's about to say. I know they're doing the same thing. It's like, oh, you're about to say this, or you're not. You get what I'm saying? That's exactly what they did. And they weren't really coherently trying to make a statement. They were just trying to talk so you couldn't clearly hear him. Then when Nikki stopped doing that, Mike started doing the same thing. When you can hear he was about to bring up the Canadian thing with the Nazis, and they just started interrupting him. And then the moderator participated too and just moved on. She didn't go, hold on. It was Vivek's turn. Let him talk. She just said, oh, let's move on to the next question. Go ahead. We can move back to the video.
Let's see. Oh, yeah, it started again. Sorry, I was looking at another screen.
Again, you say, drill, baby, drill. But the courts won't let you. Mr. Ramaswamy, how would you bring down prices without immediate drilling?
Well, look, I think that we do have to run through the courts and get through that administrative state to make sure we're using the natural resources here at home. But here's the other thing that we can do that's easy.
Forever, Mr. Ramaswamy.
And it addresses the national debt as well as brings down prices. Put people back to work. We are using taxpayer money to pay people more to stay at home than to go to work. That is wrong. That contributes to our supply chain crisis. It contributes to inflation. That's the easiest way to unlock this economy. And here's the other thing. We have to put the Federal Reserve back in its place. This is an agency that has gone rogue. So in January 2026, when I have the opportunity as your next commander-in-chief, we will have a new chairman of the Federal Reserve who places priority on dollar stability. And then most importantly, send packing 75% of the administrative state, reduce the federal employee headcount by 75%, rescind 50% of unconstitutional federal regulations that are shackling businesses, both large and small. I've offered a very clear, practical plan to do it. That's how we unleash the economy. That's how we revive the integrity of a three-branch constitutional republic rather than this technocracy and aristocracy in the administrative state.
Now, if you had no idea what the Fed chair was, you would think that was a good answer. The president has no control over who is the Fed chair. None.
Energy independence.
The people
we became
in
a net
the organization
energy
vote
for the first
for
time
the chairman.
in 75
But he just had
years.
you think he can just appoint
But
somebody
on day one,
that has
Joe
his
Biden declared
ideology.
a war on energy, which was no
Not true.
surprise because when Joe Biden ran for president, he said he was going to end fossil fuels. And they've been working overtime to do that ever since.
I'm sure they're not going to get back to
we're going to open up federal lands. We're going to unleash.
I see all had
energy.
to
We're gonna have
all
of
in
the
play.
above
I mean,
energy
No,
strategy.
we can. I was
And
just
have a
about to
plan
tell you.
that
I
actually
think we're
not
probably
only
going to end
reclaim
this
energy
early because they're not going
independence,
to
but
get back
in
to any issues that
2006,
we
America lost
So
our
if you want
position
to
as the leading
wind it down or
energy
something, whenever
producer.
we
I
can
believe in the next 10 years with the right policies and experienced leadership in the White House, we can reclaim our role as the leading energy producer on Earth, and that'll grow the American economy for generations to come.
Governor Haley, reaction to that, please.
The person who's leading an energy state. Could I answer the energy question?
No, Governor Haley.
So, the first thing I'll say is
This guy
what
needs to
I saw
shut
at the
up,
United
man. He's
Nations
always
is
trying to
national
chime in.
energy security is national security. We need a president that understands we have to partner with our producers and make sure that we have their backs. What you don't need is a president who is against energy independence. Ron DeSantis is against fracking. He's against drilling. He's been against.
I'm gonna let
He always talks about what happens on day one. You better watch out because what happens on day two is when you're in trouble. Day two in Florida, you banned fracking, you banned offshore drilling, you did it on federal lands, and you took green subsidies that you didn't have to take.
Governor DeSantis, you were
It is
mentioned.
true.
You have the
Look at
right to
day two.
respond. 30 seconds.
Yeah. I just did a plan out in West Texas for American energy dominance. We're going to choose Midland over Moscow. We're going to choose the Marcellus over the Mullahs, and we're going to choose Bakken over Beijing, and we are going to lower your gas prices. We are going to get that job done because it's important for our national security. It's important for jobs, and that's one of the best ways to drive down inflation.
Governor DeSantis. Governor DeSantis. Governor DeSantis, this question is for you.
Our voters enacted a constitutional
You
amendment
banned it before they
doesn't
voted.
allow. No, it's not true.
You banned it before they voted, and not only that, they didn't vote on
fracking. She's totally
fracking.
wrong. They voted it
Check
in.
it.
That's
Check
what we
it.
did. Onshore, we do it in Florida. We don't have as much as maybe West Texas, but we do it. But that was the Constitution. So that's just wrong. And let's just get real here. My plan will get the job done. We are going to be energy dominant, and that's what's going to happen.
And the voters didn't even vote on fracking, and you banned
We are
fracking.
moving on with this question for Governor DeSantis. Governor, excuse me, we cannot talk over each other. We must respect each other's time. My apologies for that.
Oh my God, that guy needs to be quiet.
This is your question. The Biden administration is hell-bent on student loan forgiveness, but you say colleges should be on the hook when graduates cannot pay their debt. How does that address the cost of college? The cost of college itself?
Because the colleges are going to have to make a decision. Do we expand the gender studies department, knowing some of those graduates may not have great learning opportunities? No, they're going to focus on the things that really matter. They're going to make different choices. They're going to try to graduate people in 4 years. I also just want to come back to something Dana asked last segment about 9/11.
This
I was
debate,
just at
I have
the
less
9/11
hope
memorial with the families, my wife and I were. It's very touching.
I have even less
to be
hope
there,
after
and it
hearing these
affected my
clowns.
life because I ended up joining the military as a result of that. I've been a blue-collar kid, minimum wage in Dunedin, Florida. I ended up getting through Yale and Harvard Law School and somehow came out more conservative than when I went in, and that is not easy to do. Had a lot of opportunities to make money, but I wanted to serve, and I'll never forget coming back on the plane from Iraq, landing in Coronado, California, North Island, and feeling that breeze off the Pacific Ocean and say, you know what? I am lucky to have been born an American, and I think being able to serve, and I'll be the first president elected since 1988 who's actually served overseas in a war. I think that's going to help me as commander-in-chief to know how
You're not
see
getting
these
elected,
issues
sir.
and understand that there are real lives at stake for people that wear the uniform.
And we know that Governor Haley's husband is serving right now as well, and we thank him for that. Senator Scott, the national debt has nearly doubled in your time in office. The approval rate for Congress is at a mere 19%. If this were a business, you'd probably all be fired in Washington, but you're here tonight looking for a promotion.
That's why
in
experience means
2013,
nothing.
Governor Haley hired you for the Senate. I'd like you to tell her why you should be promoted to CEO of the nation instead of her.
Certainly. One of the things I'd say is if you look at
This
our
is an
national debt,
unserious
$33
question,
trillion,
man.
I would love to have an opportunity
What is
to
the purpose
have
of
this
this?
country pass a
We are so
balanced
void
budget
of intellect,
amendment.
Nick.
That
We
would
are,
constrain
as
the
a country,
spending
we
in
are so
Washington in the
void
same
of
fashion
intellect.
that it does
We're
in
so
every
proud
state
to be
in our nation, number one.
stupid,
Number two,
to not
if you
even
want to
want
actually
to be
reduce our
smart.
national debt,
What
you have
the
to grow
fuck
our
is
economy.
this,
In
man?
order to grow our
Yeah,
economy,
our mind is
you need to create
decolonized, so
about
people have
10
no idea
million
how we
jobs
view our
to grow our
country. Our
economy
country is
at
ran by
5%. You can do that in three
That's why
specific
people who are
sectors.
Western
Number one,
chauvinists,
the energy sector. We
Western
could create
secessionists,
between
US
3 and
they're so
3.5
stupid to us.
million
Hey,
jobs.
how can
if
you
we
believe
unleash
this is the
all
best
of our
country? This
energy
garbage
resources.
that we're watching.
America is the most.
It's so absurd
We're
to
the
me.
richest
Anyone who
country.
has faith
If
in
you
this
combine coal, gas,
Revolution
and
or
oil,
bust.
why not unleash all of our resources? Number two, we've lost 100,000
All right, I think I'm going to take off,
factories.
Nick, so
100,000
I'll let you
factories
close it out
in the
tonight.
last 25 years.
Get
I'm
out.
gonna let the
Continue
debate
on my
finish
Made in
because I know you
America
got time.
plan. We
Yeah,
could
but
bring
because this
jobs
is pretty
back to
terrible.
America
So my
in a
final words
similar
before I
fashion
go,
Yeah.
I feel less
that
hopeful
we did when
than
I
I
wrote.
started. I feel like this shit is worse because the stuff I heard from them, like if you can have this logic and have this reasoning for some of the shit, like I don't even know how to combat some of these stuff that they're just making up stuff. Like the guy in the China segment we were listening, like how he was unhinged, like damn man, I have nothing to say. You're so far gone, like I have nothing to even combat this, and that's what the feeling I'm getting from this debate. Like I'm just like, man, can we is this really like how are we going to change the mind of people who believe this kind of level of nonsense, man? It is nonsense that was in this debate. So that's my final words on it.
Yeah, what's that, CJ? Tomorrow,
All right.
I think we're gonna do Nick and CJ tomorrow because I'm guest hosting Due Dissidence on Friday. I think I'll show Friday morning, so we're gonna do a show Thursday. We have a Gray Zone Lion from the Gray Zone. He joined us as well. So let me know if you're free. If not, I can do.
Yeah,
something.
we'll discuss time and see
Yeah.
because I'm gonna drop my wife is going to a funeral for her grandma, so I'm gonna drop her off to the airport in the morning. So we'll be in contact and we'll set something up.
Yeah,
so everybody
just let me know.
stay tuned. Yeah, stay tuned. All right,
Yeah,
all right, Nick. I'll see you later, sir. See everybody.
All right, I'm gonna let the debate finish out here for you guys.
State people respond to leadership. I've done it while others have talked about it.
CEO, we actually have a CEO of the White House, which is what I think we need. If I may just briefly interject here, we need a zero-based budgeting. That's the way businesses are actually run. Start with zero as the baseline for the budget and then see what's actually necessary. There isn't a blue state or a red state in this union that does it. The federal government doesn't do it. But successful companies, including the ones that I've built as a CEO, will do it. And I think we need a CEO in the White House to get that done.
Governor Burgum runs a state that way.
Yeah,
Yes,
tech
go
questions,
ahead.
you didn't ask the only guy that's been in tech. You have energy questions, you don't ask anything. But I'm just going to say right now, when you say nobody else has done it, The energy plans that have all been announced in the last month by these other folks on stage, we're already doing it in North Dakota. The border plans they're already talking about, we've got troops down at the border flying helicopter missions from North Dakota, from San Diego to the Gulf Coast, trying to stop transnational criminal organizations from inflicting the invasion and the mass casualties in our state. And on the energy policy, we're already doing it. And it's not saying when nobody else done the big fights, North Dakota was leading the charge. We won the battle to get the Biden administration, who was ignoring the law. They were the first administration since Truman that wasn't holding the quarterly required lease sales. And we won that in federal court. WOTUS, we won that in federal court. We're fighting the Biden administration on 20 fronts. To say that nobody's fighting the big fights, just look at the record of what we're doing right now. Yeah. Energy, economy, national security, I've been talking about it since day one, and now finally good, we're having the conversation about it, but we've got the answer in North Dakota.
Governor Burgum, let's talk big government. This question's for you. Big government keeps getting bigger. 1/5 of all new jobs this year have been created by the government. Governor Burgum, you say you want to shrink the size of government, but it has been a century since any president has done that. Why would you be any different?
Well, because we've done it in North Dakota. When I took office, we shrunk the state budget general fund by 27% in the first 4 months I was office, and all the trains still running on time. Why? Because you had a business leader that was actually there. Inside of every government job, there's 10 or 20% of mind-numbing, soul-sucking work that even the state and federal employees don't want to do, and you can engineer that work out of the job. That would free up right there 20% of 2 million civilian employees. And by the way, we've got 10 million jobs open. They'd have plenty to do, and they could be generating taxes instead of being paid by taxes. This is totally possible to do it if you have somebody that understands, because having worked in technology for 30 years, everything we had to do was to be better, faster, and cheaper the next day. That's what we can do in government. That's what we're doing in North Dakota.
All right. Governor DeSantis, I want to ask you about something that I think is on a lot of Republicans' minds. This election could come down to less than 50,000 votes in 3 states. Abortion was on the ballot in 6 states in 2022. Republicans lost all of them. Next year, abortion will likely be on the ballot in Arizona. That is a must-win state. Governor DeSantis, how are you going to win over independent, pro-choice voters in Arizona?
Same way we did in Florida. We won the greatest Republican victory in a governor's race in the history of the state, over 1.5 million votes. We were winning places like Miami-Dade County, Palm Beach, that nobody thought was possible because we were leading with purpose and conviction. I reject this idea that pro-lifers are to blame for midterm defeats. I think there's other reasons for that. The former president, he's missing in action tonight. He's had a lot to say about that. He should be here explaining his comments to try to say that pro-life protections are somehow a terrible thing. I want him to look into the eyes and tell people who've been fighting this fight for a long time. My wife and I earlier today were at the gravesite of President and Mrs. Reagan, and I noticed that there was a quote where it says, every single person has purpose and worth. We're better off when everybody counts. And I think we should stand for what we believe in. I think we should hold the Democrats accountable for their extremism, supporting abortion all the way up until the moment of birth. That is infanticide, and that is wrong.
Let me ask Governor Christie. Governor Christie, do you think that Republicans...
Yes, I will.
Okay, Governor Christie, do you think that Republicans can do that in Arizona if this referendum is on the ballot there?
Yeah, because I did it in New Jersey, Dana.
Then why are all these other states losing?
Well, because they don't have leaders in those states who are leading the fight the way it should be led. And the fact is, look, I was a governor here of the only blue state that's represented up here. This is where the fight is really tough for Republicans. And those are the states that we're going to have to try to win if we're going to win the White House back. And what we did is 14 times, Dana, in 8 years, I vetoed Planned Parenthood funding. 14 times. No one else gets it that much. The Democrats just kept sending it to me, and I kept saying no because I believe in life, but I also believe in states' rights. And I think we fought hard against Roe versus Wade for decades to say that states should make these decisions. So we're going to have those fights in the states. But what you need is a leader who can talk to people and make them understand that if you're pro-life, you have to be pro-life for the entire life, not just the 9 months in the womb. And we talked a lot about fentanyl tonight, and we haven't spoken one moment about treatment. But we need to make sure that for the drug-addicted 16-year-old on the floor of the county lockup, her life is precious too. And we need to be providing treatment to cure this as a disease that it is. If you're pro-life, you got to be pro-life for the entire life. We start talking like that, they're going to do what I did in the blue state, which was get reelected with 61% of the vote and won 70% of independents and 51% of Latinos because I told them the truth from my heart.
Thank you. Vice President Pence, the latest Univision poll found that 73% of Latino voters think the Republican Party doesn't care about or is being hostile toward them, the Hispanic community. Only Governor DeSantis has translated his campaign into Spanish. How will you reach out to Latino voters?
Well, I promise you that we're going to continue to build bridges to every community in this country. And I'm incredibly proud of that tax cut and tax reform bill. I worked on Capitol Hill to help get that bill passed into law, the largest tax cut in American history. We saw literally the lowest unemployment ever recorded for Hispanic Americans, the lowest unemployment ever recorded for African Americans, 50-year low for women. So I think the President of the United States needs to be a champion for the American dream for every American. It begins with the unborn and the aged and the infirm. And it begins with every ethnic group in this country. And I promise you, if I'm President of the United States, I'll be a champion. I'll be a champion for the American dream, for Hispanic Americans and for every American. So help me God.
Senator Scott, reaction?
Yes, there's no doubt that if you lead by example, it's the best way to get the job done. If you look at my office in the Senate, my chief of staff is the only Hispanic female chief of staff in the Senate. I hired her because she was the best, highest qualified person we have. What we need are leaders who lead by example. And I will simply say, I would love to finish my conversation with Nikki as it relates to the job that needs to get done. Nikki offered a 10-cent gas tax increase in South Carolina. Talk about someone who has never seen a federal dollar she doesn't like. 10 cents on the gallon in South Carolina. As the UN ambassador, you literally put $50,000 on curtains and a $15 million subsidized location. Next.
You got bad information. First of all, I fought the gas tax in South Carolina multiple times against the establishment.
Just go to YouTube.
Against the establishment.
Just go to
and
YouTube
you want to know what that 10 cent
Yep.
was? When they wouldn't pass the gas tax, the establishment and the companies wanted me to do it so much that I said the only way I will
Here's
pass
what you
it
have to
if
do.
you will
All you
give
have to
us
do.
three.
All you
excuse
have
me,
to do is go
if you will
watch
give-
Nikki Haley on YouTube.
Yes. If you will give me 3 times the deduction in income tax, then I will look at your gas
So you
tax,
said
which
yes,
is why it didn't
you would
happen.
pass.
Secondly,
Exactly, Ron.
secondly, on the 50 million.
Here is a nice part.
Secondly, on the curtains, do your
Yes.
homework, Tim, because Obama bought those curtains.
Did you
and
send them back?
It's in the press.
Did you send them back?
It's the State Department.
Did you send them back?
Did you send them back? You're the one that works in Congress.
Oh my gosh.
You get it
You
done.
hung them on your curtains.
They were there before I even showed up at the residence. You are scrapping. You are scrapping.
I'm not scrapping.
Excuse me. You know I fought
Here's a fact.
taxes.
Here's a fact, though.
I cut taxes. I loaded up our
You wanted a gas tax increase, and then you wanted
Ladies and gentlemen, we do not intend to go ahead like this. In fact, we're about to take a commercial break. We'll have more of the second Republican debate live from the Reagan Presidential Library in just a few moments.
All right, well, it's confirmed. I don't think Tim Scott and Nikki Haley like each other. They were pitted against each other a little bit at the beginning of this, and the fight continued. I'm hearing a little bit of audio in my background. I don't know if the audience.
I think I'm gonna end it there. I think they literally just gonna do closing statements. It is rabble. I hope you guys enjoyed our commentary. Like I said, we have I want to get his name correct. We have a Gray Zone reporter, the one who called Lion Cosgrove. Lions Cosgrove from the Gray Zone will be joining us tomorrow. And also will be hosting Due Dissonance on Friday morning. So still a lot to cover. I can't wait to get to the foreign policy part. So if you guys want to check it out, you could. But it's doing closing statements at that point. So thank you guys for watching the stream. Have a good night, fam.